Chapter 380. In the tribe, every person with a high position would swear to the fire pit and the three bone ornaments before taking over. When Zheng Luo took over as chief and Duo Kong took over as leader of the hunting team, they all went through the same procedure. So when the shamanists took these out, no one was surprised to see them. Except for those who were very close to the box, the others only knew that there was such a box but could not see what was inside. If not for this, Duo Kong wouldn't have been the only one who recognized the necklace when Xiao Xian fought Zhui 2 days ago. Xiao Xian bowed to the box. This was the way tribesmen greeted their ancestors. According to the original plan, when the box was taken out, it would be Xiao Xian's turn to say his oath. But those closest to the fire pit, such as Duo Kong and a few elders, waited and waited. Xiao Xian still did not speak. What's wrong? Did he forget his oath? Did he not remember what to say? Or was he so nervous that he forgot everything? Even Chief Zheng Luo looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. But when he saw the excitement on the shamanist's face, he realized that something had changed. Tears glistened in the shamanist's eyes as she stared unblinkingly at the box in her hands. The three bone ornaments that had been sleeping quietly in the box suddenly brightened when Xiao Xian came closer, as if the dust covering them had been swept away. Even if it was not as bright as the one worn by Xiao Xian, it was enough to make the shamanist happy. No one knew better than these adept puppets what the balls and the bone ornaments represented. In the past, every time the adept puppets saw the dim balls on the bone ornaments, they would feel a deep sense of guilt, as if they had been abandoned by their ancestors. But now this change gave the shamanist hope. The ancestors had not left. They had always been here, guarding the Yinjiao people. The Yinjiao people worshipped their ancestors, and these were left behind by the first shamanists. They represented the most powerful shamanists in the Yinjiao tribe. If he wasn't holding the stone box containing the bone ornament, he would have knelt down immediately upon seeing the bone ornament's transformation. Xiao Xian also saw the changes in the three bone ornaments. When he received the bone ornaments in another tribe, he learned from the shamanist that the first shamanist had left behind 6 balls and made them into 6 bone ornaments. Xiao Xian had seen 3 of them before, and Xiao Xian finally saw the remaining 3. It was good that they were still here. They were not lost. The 6 bone ornaments would be reunited one day. According to the shamanist's instructions, Xiao Xian transformed the totem power in his body into a form outside his body, and separated a part of it to connect to the fire pit. This was something he had to do before he made the oath. The others in the tribe had connected to the fire pit in this way, and made the fire rise. However, Xiao Xian didn't expect that the moment he separated the totem power to connect to the fire pit, there would be a drastic change. He didn't even get the chance to make the oath he had prepared. All his attention was attracted by this change. The totem flame in his mind became active, and at the same time, the fire in the fire pit rushed up. The sudden rise of the fire in the fire pit attracted everyone's attention. Almost at the same time, all the torches around, including the bonfires on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain, were extinguished in an instant. The only fire on the entire mountain was the flame in the fire pit. The elders in the tribe had lived to this age and had participated in countless ceremonies and ceremonies. They had also heard many stories about the fire pit from their fathers and grandfathers, but they had never seen this scene before. Between heaven and earth, only the fire on the mountaintop seemed to exist. It was like a king standing on high, looking down on all living beings. The rising fire rolled up, and a pattern of 2 horns appeared in it. It turned from blurry to clear. This was a pattern that every Yinjiao person was familiar with. They had seen it in the fire pit during the ceremony, but it was not as big or as clear as this one. The temperature of his blood seemed to be rising, like boiling soup, rushing and cheering in his body. The vibration came from his bone marrow, and the totem patterns on his body seemed to be brighter than before. This is... The shamanist looked at the high fire in the fire pit, and was shocked to the point of being sluggish. However, this was not the end. Soon, the shamanist was disturbed by another wave of fluctuation. She looked at the stone box in her hand. The round beads on the bone ornaments in the stone box began to glow red. It was not the light reflected, but the light emitted by the beads themselves. The light on the beads grew brighter and brighter. Finally, a flame emerged from the beads. 3 bone ornaments and 3 round beads appeared at the same time. Even those who were standing a little far away and could not see the bone ornaments clearly could see the fire coming from a box. The air was scorching hot, but none of the Yin Jiao people were burned. On the contrary, they felt an unprecedented peace of mind and a touch of being protected. This unprecedented change surprised every Yin Jiao person gathered here. They threw all other thoughts out of their minds and just stared at the fire pit. On the bone ornaments worn by Xiao Xian, the flames from the round beads began to expand. In the box held by the shamaness, the flames from the 3 bone ornaments began to expand at the same pace. The shamaness and Xiao Xian were standing by the fire pit. Both of them were wrapped in flames. If it were not for the fact that they were unharmed and unscathed, the others would have panicked. The shamaness' body was stiff, and she carefully held the stone box. She did not even dare to shake her hands, for fear that she would disrupt this change. Although she did not know what was going to happen next, she knew that it would be of great benefit to the Yin Jiao tribe. Compared to the shocked Yin Jiao people and the excited shamaness, Xiao Xian was much calmer. He had also guessed what was going to happen. Such a change had happened once before. Looking at the rising flames, Xiao Xian looked up at the sky. Seeing this, the shamaness also looked up. When the others saw their actions, although they did not understand why, they also looked up. Some people even wondered if this was a new ritual to pay respects to the ancestors. However, they soon found that they were wrong. As the balls of flames rose and gathered in the air, they formed a huge human silhouette. This silhouette was quickly becoming clearer and more complete. The fire in the fire pit grew stronger and stronger. A flame giant appeared at the top of the mountain. Every Yin Jiao person was shocked by the appearance of this flame giant. When the people who were paying attention to all of this came back to their senses, they found that they were already kneeling on the ground. As the flame giant opened his arms, the flames from the fire pit suddenly rose into the sky, as if they were going to break through the sky. The nearby mountains and the thick dark clouds in the sky that blocked the moonlight were all dyed with a layer of fire. The majestic aura spread out, and in an instant it swept through the entire mountain, spreading to every corner. Yin Zhan, who did not spread his flames, used his aura to intimidate everything. There were still some captured beasts in the animal pens at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, every beast in the pens, no matter if it was an ordinary beast or a fearsome beast like the dinosaur, was trembling and wanted to turn into a stone. The dinosaur that was tied up by thick vines and thrown on the ground struggled violently. It wanted to dig a hole in the ground with its hooves and bury its head in it to relieve the fear in its heart. On the other side of the man-made river that surrounded the mountain, where Yin Jiao was located, there were some restless beasts in the forest on the other side. At this moment, as if they had been hit by a stick, they all turned around and left one after another. In the Taihe tribe, which was closest to Yin Jiao, according to the custom, those who were not assigned to patrol would go to bed when the sky turned dark. At this time, many people were already in bed. Some warriors had just laid down and were about to fall asleep, but their bodies suddenly shook and the hair on their necks stood up. They were so scared that they did not feel sleepy at all. They rolled out of bed and did not bother to put on their clothes. They ran out of the house to higher ground or open space, and then looked in the direction of Yin Jiao. The two tribes are not too close to each other, so they could not see what was happening over there. They could only see the red sky and the forest. In the dark forest, there was a small, conspicuous patch of fiery red. It was a strange scene. What was Yin Jiao doing over there? Chapter 381. On the day of the welcoming ceremony, Xiao Xian, the newly appointed young elder, made everyone in the Yin Jiao tribe witness an unforgettable scene. If there were doubts about Xiao Xian's appointment as elder, after tonight's ceremony, all of them were forgotten. No one objected to this position, second only to the shamaness and the chief. As for Xiao Xian, the tribe's respect for him grew. Every time they saw Xiao Xian, they would think of the flame giant that rose from Xiao Xian's body. The shock that came from deep within their bones was still clear when they recalled it. After the welcoming ceremony, Xiao Xian was officially introduced to everyone. As for Xiao Xian's background, it wasn't important. To the tribesmen, they only needed to know that Xiao Xian was an elder. As for the rest, if the shamaness and the chief didn't say anything, they wouldn't ask. This was very similar to the personality of the other Yinjiao tribe. If there was a moment of doubt, they would gossip in private and forget about it after a while. There will be a hunt in 7 days. Xiao Xian, you should come with everyone, Chief Zheng Luo said to Xiao Xian. Group activities were a way to speed up integration. Hunting would allow Xiao Xian to better adapt to the tribe. Moreover, Zheng Luo believed in Xiao Xian's strength. If he could come here safely on his own, and as a senior totemic warrior, his hunting skills wouldn't be bad. Okay, Xiao Xian replied. Zheng Luo also wanted to give Xiao Xian some bronze wares, but Xiao Xian refused. After a few days in the tribe, Xiao Xian had a general understanding of the tribe's situation. Although many tribes used metal wares, most of them were traded from the slave masters. The core seeds were in the hands of the slave masters. Moreover, the core seeds here were much larger than the ones in the desert. The slave masters who were exiled 1,000 years ago only brought 3 small core seeds with them. The ones left in the main camp were all big guys with abundant metal sources. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so generous as to trade for bronze wares. However, the price of these bronze wares was also high. Many things needed to be exchanged for them. Before the children of the tribe went hunting for the first time, they would be given a bronze sword or other objects by their parents as a gift. Sometimes, such a tool would accompany them for a lifetime. A sword or an axe, etc. If there was a gap during a hunt, the tribe had a coppersmith. Although his skills were not top-notch and could not be compared to the talents of the slave owners, he could still deal with some basic situations. He could reforge the broken copper into a sharp weapon. Warriors like Zheng Luo had excellent hunting skills, so naturally they could trade for more bronze wares. However, Xiao Xian didn't lack bronze wares to hunt. If he wanted to trade for bronze wares, he could rely on his own abilities. Thus, while Zheng Luo and the others were wondering how Xiao Xian would handle the upcoming hunt, they saw Xiao Xian moving stone after stone into the house. Ever since bronze wares entered the tribe, more and more people realized the convenience of bronze wares. Stone wares naturally faded out. Although some people still used them, they weren't necessary anymore. Seeing Xiao Xian move stones, the shamaness and the chief felt sad. It turned out that another group of brothers was still using stone wares. Once again rejecting the shamaness, the chief, and the elders' good intentions, Xiao Xian focused on crafting stone wares at home. Another reason why Xiao Xian rejected the shamaness and the chief's gifts was that he was used to crafting his own wares. He might not be used to other people's wares. If he wasn't used to it, it would be easy to make mistakes during a hunt. Many people in the tribe couldn't accurately differentiate between stone materials anymore. However, Xiao Xian could tell a glance. The stones he brought back were knocked down from somewhere outside the tribe. The stone material was above average. It wasn't the best, but it was still passable. If he needed more, he could wait until he found a better stone during a hunt. Thus, every day when everyone passed by Xiao Xian's house, they could hear the clanking sounds from inside. Duo Kong and Guang curiously ran in to watch Xiao Xian craft stone. Duo Kong and Guang watched as Xiao Xian cut the large stone into small pieces and grinded it into shape. Both of them had been using bronzeware for a long time and were amazed. So this was how their ancestors survived when they didn't have bronzeware. Other than the large and small stonewares, there were all kinds of wooden and bone tools, needles, nails, and even miniature boomerangs. Xiao Xian had them all prepared. This time he planned to hunt more. He had just arrived and received a lot of benefits from everyone. He wanted to repay them. He also wanted to store more goods to exchange for other things in the future. 7 days later, some of the warriors who were going out to hunt gathered at the open space at the foot of the mountain. They were ready to go. Xiao Xian painted some colored mud on his face. This was similar to his experience in the other tribe. Before hunting, they would paint patterns on their faces. But in the past, it was because of tradition and belief. Now, it was used for another purpose, camouflage. When the warriors here used their totemic power, the totemic patterns on their bodies would become brighter. The brighter the totemic power, the brighter the totemic patterns. Therefore, before hunting, they would use a kind of colored mud to cover their faces and exposed arms with a layer of it, making it easier to hide. This colored mud was specially made by the shamanists. When Yinjiao's ancestors came here, they experimented with a type of mud for camouflage. It didn't dry as easily as normal mud. When applied to the face, it wouldn't fall off due to the movements of the facial muscles. It could last for at least 10 days. The hunting team was still led by Duo Kong and Guang Yi. Those who didn't participate in the previous hunt, if they weren't on duty, came this time. For example, Wu Zhan, Tao Zheng, Zhui, and the rest of the younger generation were very enthusiastic. With Xiao Xian as a comparison, they were motivated, especially Zhui, who was still holding back his anger. After checking everyone and lining up, Duo Kong waved his hand. "Let's go!" Roar! The team roared in unison. Then, it was time to sing a hunting song, a tradition of the tribe. Since the beginning of time, there have been our ancestors. When the tribe first rose, hunting was our priority. Spring warmed up, the ice and snow melted. Birds and beasts jumped happily. Birds chirped and beasts roared. It was a familiar scene, a familiar feeling. Although it was different from before, the same song and the same atmosphere made Xiao Xian feel like he was back in the beginning, walking down the path of glory with the hunting team. He couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart. He missed it so much. On the Taiha tribe side, they were also planning to go hunting. After walking for a while, they heard the Yin Jiao team singing again. They instantly panicked. Damn it, the Yin Jiao people were here to annoy people. Hunting was exhilarating. Luckily, everyone's hunting areas were separated so they didn't have to bump into each other. Otherwise, the Taiha people would have vomited their breakfast. Chapter 382. Tall trees could be seen everywhere in the dense forest. The trunks near the canopy were so thick that it would take 3 people to wrap their arms around them. However, the trunks near the ground were so thick that it would take 10 people to wrap their arms around them. The roots on the ground were twisted and intertwined, extending to the surroundings. They were like the claws of ancient beasts clinging to the ground. Going through these places was like climbing a slope, but it was not a problem for those who often hunted in the forest. Silhouettes shuttled through the dense forest. After going deep into the forest, the crowd dispersed, and each group went in different directions. This time, it was not a group hunt, so the groups were scattered. Xiao Xian was with some young warriors. There were more than 20 people in the group, including Tao Zheng and Zhui. The leader of this group was Wu Zhan. According to their status, Xiao Xian should have been the leader. However, since it was the first time Xiao Xian had joined the group and was not familiar with the others, he did not take over the leader's position. Everyone in the group cooperated well. At the beginning, everyone was a little cautious because of Xiao Xian. However, after a while, they got used to it and the atmosphere of hunting returned to normal. No words were spoken. Just a movement and a look was enough to know what each other meant. They cooperated well. Before setting off, Tao Zheng had been told by the chief, the leader, his father, and a few uncles to take care of Xiao Xian. Although Xiao Xian was strong and was an elder, he was still young and might not be able to adapt to the rhythm of the hunting group quickly. Therefore, as they got closer to their usual hunting spot, Tao Zheng wondered if he should stop and explain to Xiao Xian first. However, Tao Zheng soon found that Xiao Xian did not need any reminders. In fact, he adapted very well. For example, when they ran into an unusual situation, Tao Zheng made a gesture and the people behind him followed suit. Xiao Xian's movements were not slower than the others. He did not need any reminders from Tao Zheng at all. Behind the bushes in front of them, on a tree that was not too tall, the treetops were shaking. Because of the bushes and dense grass, the people in the group could not see clearly. Tao Zheng made a hand gesture, and the people behind him immediately slowed down. Their footsteps became lighter as they slowly approached. Like agile monkeys, you and another person leaped up a nearby tree and looked ahead. If there was prey there, then prepare to hunt. With his special vision, Xiao Xian was able to see through the bushes and see a shadow behind them. Judging from its silhouette, it wasn't very big. Judging from its bones, it was still in its infancy. Jumping up the tree, Zhui glanced over and shook his head at Tao Zheng. There was a clawed beast there. Their head outline looked very much like a horse. Their necks were slightly long, and their torsos were very strong. Usually, they walked slowly and appeared to be sluggish. However, when they encountered danger, it was different. Their speed would increase by several levels. Their hooves were not only big, but also hard. Being kicked was not a pleasant feeling. Clawed beasts were also on the hunting team's list of prey, but they did not include cubs. Generally speaking, if there was not a special shortage of food, Yinjiao's warriors would not hunt such cubs in the forest. First, there was no challenge. Even if they hunted one, they could not prove their strength. Second, the cubs did not have much meat. Compared to adult ferocious beasts, they had much less meat. It was better to save their strength for other prey. That was why the warriors were more willing to leave such young beasts for the future or leave them for their descendants to deal with. At this time, the clawed beast that was still in its infancy was supporting itself on its hind legs. It was holding the tree trunk and eating the leaves and fruits on the tree. Its ears were moving, listening to the movements around it. However, it did not notice that there was a hunting team near it. It also did not know that it had escaped because it was not yet an adult. Further ahead, there was a river. There was a sandy land on the bank of the river. There were no traces of other animals around. We usually don't go to the river to get water. It's too dangerous. If we want to get water, we can get it from the trees and grass. Or we can go to the mountain streams. Tao Zheng explained to Xiao Xian in a low voice. What's in the river? Xiao Xian asked. There are fishes with sharp teeth. Sometimes there are anacondas lurking in the river. However, these are not the main reasons. Tao Zheng pointed at the sandy land. There might be bone beasts there. When they are there, the river is especially quiet. The fish and other underwater animals will avoid them. Bone beasts? This was a new name. Xiao Xian had never seen them before. Looking at the sandy land, Xiao Xian did not see anything wrong with it. However, his instincts told him that there was something there, something dangerous. The bones of the bone beasts are very hard and suitable for making bone objects. The bone eyes made are all very good things. However, bone beasts are not easy to hunt. Their skin is too hard, and their skulls are more like a layer of hard stone. They are very strong. If we weren't confident, we wouldn't provoke the bone beasts there. Other than that, they are very cunning. They are very good at disguising themselves. Once again, Xiao Xian looked at the sandy beach and changed his vision. Through the sand, he could see a very obvious giant skeleton under the sand. There was a bone beast there. It was no smaller than the dinosaur he saw earlier. As for the bone beast, just like Tao Zheng said, its head looked like it was covered with a stone helmet made of premium stone. One look, and Xiao Xian could tell that it was very tough. The bone beast was buried in the sand. Only its head was above the ground. It closed its eyes, pressed down its ears, narrowed its nostrils, and slowed its breathing. At first glance, it looked like a normal rock on the ground. There were green moss and other plants on the rock. It looked very similar to the other rocks on the shore. Those who did not know about bone beasts would not have guessed that it was the head of a giant beast. Not only were they good at disguising themselves, but they also knew how to create a cover. If there weren't any big enough stones around them, they would look for some stones that were similar to their heads and kick them to the side of the river to make it look like they were real. It could be said that more than half of the rocks on the riverbank were brought over by the bone beasts. Otherwise, the rocks wouldn't all be so similar. There's a bone beast over there. Xiao Xian pointed at the rock. It seemed that bone beasts were solitary creatures. If they lived in groups, they would be much more dangerous. They would not even need to look at them. Tao Zheng looked in the direction Xiao Xian pointed. He could not tell which of the rocks was the bone beast's head. But why was Xiao Xian so sure? Hunting in the past was too dangerous. One of the reasons was that they could not pinpoint the exact location of the bone beast. If they got it wrong, the beast would attack them and they would be in a passive position. But if they could be sure, they just needed to prepare. They might be able to hunt it down. The thought of hunting the bone beast made Tao Zheng excited. They were young after all. They were more inclined to challenge. "Are you sure?" Tao Zheng asked again. "Yes." After a pause, Tao Zheng asked again, "Are there any other bone beasts around here?" "No, there's only that one. But it's huge, even bigger than the dinosaur we caught in the tribe. Do you want to hunt it?" Xiao Xian looked at Tao Zheng. "Let me discuss it with everyone." After all, he was leading a team. Tao Zheng could not act on his own and ignore the wishes of others. If he wanted to hunt such a huge beast, he would have to rely on everyone. He could not do it alone. Tao Zheng told everyone about the matter. As Tao Zheng expected, everyone was very interested in hunting that giant beast. Moreover, if they could determine its specific location first, they wouldn't be in a passive position from the beginning. As long as they were prepared enough, even if the hunt failed, they could still escape unscathed. "How can you be sure that's the bone beast?" Zhui stared at Xiao Xian, questioning him. He ignored Tao Zheng's tug. The others had their doubts too, but they were not brave enough to voice it out loud. They could not be blamed for not believing him. Even the most experienced warriors in the tribe would not dare to make such a claim. So what if Xiao Xian was an elder? Why should they believe him just because he said so? Hunting was not a game. A single mistake could land them in trouble or even death. Xiao Xian did not answer Zhui's question directly. Instead, he looked around and pointed at the ground 2 steps away. "There's a rock about this big." Xiao Xian gestured, describing the size and shape of the rock. Zhui and the rest looked in the direction Xiao Xian was pointing at. There was a thick pile of rotten leaves. There were many fresh leaves and broken branches on top of it. Zhui looked at Xiao Xian. Tao Zheng nodded. Zhui hurried over and pulled out his knife. He peeled away the leaves and branches, digging through a thin layer of soil to find a rock. It was exactly as Xiao Xian had described. Seeing this, Yu's eyebrows kept rising. So accurate. Chapter 383. Xiao Xian proved his conjecture. The others believed Xiao Xian's words. "What do you think?" Tao Zheng looked at Zhui. Zhui buried the rock with leaves again. "Since we've decided, let's hunt." The bone beast was a huge temptation to them. A hunter who did not want to hunt good prey was not a good warrior. After confirming the hunt, Tao Zheng and the others retreated. They planned to have a good discussion before starting the hunt. If it was any other prey, they would not have needed such a discussion. They could have just attacked. They had worked together many times and were familiar with each other. But this was their first time hunting a bone beast. It was not part of their original plan. They had to be prepared. Unfortunately, time waits for no one. Just as they were discussing the plan, a bird flew down from the sky. It swooped across the water and picked up a fish. It circled in the air, looking for a rock to rest on. Tao Zheng and the others stared nervously at the long-necked bird and silently chanted in their hearts, fly away quickly." But the bird refused to leave. It stared at the rocks by the river. It was picky, trying to decide which one was the most comfortable to eat on. Tao Zheng and the others watched as the long-necked bird flew towards the bone beast's head with the fish in its beak. Everyone roared in their hearts, "Idiot! How could you pick that one? Even a crooked tree would be better than that rock." When the bird stepped on the bone beast's head, Tao Zheng and the others despaired. They wanted to shoot the bird to the side. Some of them even closed their eyes. They could not bear to watch. They were not afraid to see the bird being eaten. They were afraid to shoot it again. Such a great opportunity was ruined by a stupid bird just like that. If the bird had chosen another rock, the bone beast might not have been interested in it and would have continued to lie in wait. But if there was a prey on its head, even if it was a small one, the bone beast would not let it go. Roar! The beast's head, which was originally like an ordinary boulder on the riverbank, cracked open its big mouth full of barb-like fangs and bit down on the long-necked bird that dared to step on its head. The muffled roars of the beasts and the sharp and shrill cries of the birds mixed together. The other birds in the surrounding forest were collectively frightened and flew away while chirping. The young clawed beast that was eating a leaf twitched its ears and turned its head. It abandoned the tree and ran away. The bird screeching stopped. The fish that the bird had picked up fell to the ground. It struggled to jump back into the river, but was crushed by the bone beast's claws. The bone beast that was lying in ambush under the sand was like a small mountain. Its huge body suddenly appeared, and its short and sharp claws made the stones on the ground squeak. With the long-necked bird in its mouth, the bone beast's slow breathing was like a rolling boulder, striking everyone's hearts. When they saw the bone beast from afar, they did not have such a clear understanding of it. Now that they were not that close, the feeling was stronger than before. Xiao Xian leaped onto a tree and looked at the bone beast that had revealed its true form. The bone beast and the Dinoceros looked similar, but that was only in terms of shape. Overall, they were very different. One was a vegetarian, while the other was a carnivore. In terms of physique, the dino head was slightly fatter, while the bone beasts were more muscular. Compared to the dinosaur they caught before, it was like comparing a fat pig to a muscular bull. Of course, the bone beast's greatest defense was its stone-like bones. It was extremely resilient and made hunting it much more difficult. Tao Zheng and the rest whispered to each other as they watched the bone beast slowly munching on its food. "What should we do now?" someone asked. He was unwilling to give up. Attack? They did not have absolute confidence. Before they could come up with anything, something had already happened. How troublesome. Tao Zheng thought about it too. A few plans flashed through his mind, but he rejected them all. They were too dangerous. Even if they succeeded, there would be casualties in the team. That was not something he wanted to see. They were not at the point where they would risk their lives for a prey. Just as he was thinking, Tao Zheng felt someone bump into him. He looked over and saw Feng Zheng retracting his elbow. His eyes swept across the area, signaling Tao Zheng to pay attention. Tao Zheng looked over and saw Xiao Xian observing something in the tree. He lowered his voice and asked, "Xiao Xian, what do you think?" Tao Zheng had to listen to this young elder's opinion. After all, he was powerful and had status in the tribe. "I'll try," Xiao Xian said. "What?" Tao Zheng rubbed his ears, as if he was hallucinating. "I'll try." Xiao Xian came down from the tree. Everyone looked at Xiao Xian. They did not look at him mockingly, but they did not think it was a good idea either. "Don't underestimate the bone beast," Tao Zheng said seriously. Many giant beasts appear to be large in size and slow in movement, but when you really face them, you would realize how powerful they were. I know, the long-necked bird was fast, but the bone beast would use even more speed to catch the bird. That would depend on how fast it could catch the bird. Xiao Xian had a basic understanding of the bone beast's muscles and strength when it emerged from the ground. "I'll try first." "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," Xiao Xian said. Tao Zheng, Zhuai, and the rest relaxed when they heard Xiao Xian's words. They wondered if Xiao Xian had other abilities. "Be careful. If you can't handle it, we'll go help and then retreat," Tao Zheng said. "Okay, if I can't handle it, I'll tell you." "But if I don't go," Xiao Xian added. Tao Zheng hesitated and nodded. "Okay." Tao Zheng wanted to give his weapon to Xiao Xian, but Xiao Xian refused. "Thanks. I have it with me." Xiao Xian patted his bag and walked to the riverbank. Seeing Xiao Xian leave, a young warrior asked Tao Zheng, "What else does he have other than that black dagger?" "I don't know." Tao Zheng shook his head. "That dagger is made of stone, right?" Another warrior asked, worried. Tao Zheng sighed and stopped everyone from talking. "Let's wait and see." Looking at Xiao Xian quietly approaching the riverbank, everyone couldn't help but praise him in their hearts. He looked like a veteran. Maybe he really had a way. Then they saw Xiao Xian hide in a tall tree by the riverbank. He paused for a while and then threw something out. It was not aimed at the bone beast. Was it a diversion? Everyone thought of a few strategies they had used before. They widened their eyes to watch and learn. But what happened next made their jaws drop. Xiao Xian charged out towards the bone beast. Seeing this scene, Tao Zheng wished he could vomit blood. Was this what you meant by "don't worry"? Chapter 384. The clouds in the sky covered Yangguang, and the ground darkened. The forest that covered Yangguang seemed to have quietened down. The trees beside the sandy land were tall, and Xiao Xian was most satisfied with them. Xiao Xian had considered the type of tree, the wood quality, the strength of the roots, and so on. The time he spent on the tree was actually to find the best place to start. He would definitely be at a disadvantage if he fought against such a troublesome beast. Now, he had to focus on hunting. Xiao Xian planned to try a trap. Today's weather and environment were perfect for a trap. Hiding in a tree, Xiao Xian looked at the beast lying on the shore. His mind was filled with ideas, combining the terrain and environment to form a complete trap. However, theory was just theory. He had to be careful when he put it into practice. Xiao Xian no longer wore his worm skin. He had used it to wrap the core seed in the desert for Tual and the rest to bring it back to the tribe. Without a bodyguard, he had to be more careful. If he got hurt, he would be at a disadvantage. The worm skin was gone, but the string was still there. Finding the first trap point, Xiao Xian threw the stone nail with the silk thread tied to it. The sound of the stone nails hitting the ground alerted the bone beast. Its bones shrunk in size, but they were sturdier than before. When it realized that it was only a puny human, it roared and swiped at him with its claws. Xiao Xian dodged, but he didn't go far. He swung his hand again, and the shrunken boomerang, tied with a silk thread, drew an arc and wrapped around a thick tree trunk on the edge of the sandy ground. Xiao Xian did not attack immediately. Although he had a few chances to cut the beast, it might not actually hurt the beast. At most, it would only break its skin. It might even enrage the beast. Xiao Xian did not want to take the risk. He could not predict what the beast would do in a fit of rage. There were too many uncertainties. Xiao Xian did not want to risk it. He dodged the beast's attacks nimbly. Every time it looked like he was about to be hit, he would dodge again. Tao Zheng and the rest watched Xiao Xian's movements, sweating. To them, Xiao Xian was really putting on a show of life and death. It was not Xiao Xian who was shocked, but Tao Zheng and the rest. If they were not careful, Xiao Xian would end up like the fish that was squashed by the beast. Xiao Xian dodged again and again. The beast was frustrated, swinging its arms harder and harder. Every time it swung its arms, a huge tree trunk would break. Even if it didn't break, there would be a huge hole. The canopy above was about to fall. Crack! Another tree was snapped. However, Xiao Xian did not attack immediately. Instead, he focused on dodging, leading the bone beast around. What is he doing? You could not help but ask. Tao Zheng and the rest were confused as well. Their initial anxiety had faded. Seeing how Xiao Xian dodged the beast's attacks, it was clear that he had the ability to dodge the beast's attacks, but he was still running around it. Let's keep watching. If we think something is wrong, Xiao Xian can escape. Plus, Xiao Xian did not ask us to interfere, Tao Zheng said. What is he throwing? Wu Zhan, who had been silent, asked. A knife? A spear dart? It doesn't look like it. Why would he throw something other than his prey? Tao Zheng shook his head. The thick clouds were still blocking Yang Wang's view. The forest was dark, and they could not see everything clearly. However, they could not get too close either. Not only would they disrupt Xiao Xian's plan, they would also expose themselves to the beast's attack range. Thus, even if they had their own guesses, they could not go closer to take a look. On the other side, Xiao Xian ran a few steps vertically up the tree trunk and leapt up. Below, the bone beast opened its mouth wide, revealing a mouthful of sharp, hook-like teeth. Ah! A young warrior could not help but cry out. Moving in the air was not as easy as moving on land. It was difficult to dodge. Tao Zheng was about to rush over as well. Why didn't they ask for help at a time like this? Xiao Xian looked at the bone beast, who was waiting for its prey with its mouth wide open. He smiled. Sometimes, the switch between predator and prey happened in the blink of an eye. He had fallen into the trap. Xiao Xian was getting closer and closer to the beast's mouth. He could smell the beast's bloody breath and see the bird feathers between its teeth. But just as the bone beast was about to open its mouth to swallow the prey jumped up again. The anxious Tao Zheng and the rest did not see Xiao Xian fall directly into the beast's open mouth. Instead, they saw Xiao Xian jump up again when he was close to the beast's mouth. He jumped up again? How was that possible? Everyone widened their eyes, trying to get a better look. On the other side, not only did Xiao Xian jump up, he was also jumping up step by step. It was as if there were stairs in the air. The bone beast wasn't the only one who was dumbfounded. Tao Zheng and the others had their eyes popping out of their sockets. How was that possible? The wind blew. In the sky, the thick layers of clouds drifted, and the sunlight that had been blocked was once again revealed little by little. The golden rays of light once again swept through the forest. Tao Zheng and the rest saw thin lines reflecting the golden light around the beast. Lines! Xiao Xian was jumping up by stepping on lines. Were those the lines he had thrown out earlier? But why would Xiao Xian make those lines? Lines of golden light surrounded the bone beast. Xiao Xian had already jumped to the most suitable height. His timing was perfect. A rock rolled into his palm and slid between his fingers. With a flick of his finger, Xiao Xian shot out the small stone. Boom! The sound of the taut threads vibrating could be heard. It was as if a switch had been flipped. Immediately after, a series of rapid cutting sounds burst out. It was like the ear-piercing sound of fingernails scratching hard objects, causing Tao Zheng and the others to have goosebumps all over their bodies. They couldn't help but tremble. Like a loose cocoon, the bone beast was tightly bound by strings. The beast struggled with brute force. The more it struggled, the sharper the sound. There seemed to be the smell of burning wood in the air. Boom! Boom! Along with several sounds, some of the tall trees around the sandy land were cut down. Some of them were cut off from the ground, while others were cut off from the tree crown. Roar! The bone beast struggle broke a dozen trees, and it lost its balance and fell to the ground. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Xiao Xian didn't want to rely on these threads to completely tie up the beast. He didn't want to use this method to drag the beast down and trip it up. Xiao Xian was brought to a tree by the force of the silk thread. The totemic power in his body was at its peak, and even the mud on his face could not completely cover the exposed totemic patterns. The bulging muscles on his arms were constantly twitching, and his legs were gathering strength. His strength exploded in an instant, and the tree trunk under his feet made a soft cracking sound. His body was already pushed out. Xiao Xian was extremely fast. In a blink of an eye, he was in front of the beast and punched it. The beast that was tripped had just lifted its head when it saw the incoming punch. The shockwave from the punch made it squint its eyes. Boom! Tao Zheng and the others shuddered. They could tell from the sound of the punch that it was a powerful one. Zhui looked at the bone beast whose head was buried in the sand. He thought of the dino-head beast that was smashed into the ground back in the tribe. His facial muscles twitched. He did not see it with his own eyes back then. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he was deeply moved. What a powerful punch! That, before Tao Zheng could finish his sentence, another punch came from the other side. The beast struggled to lift its head from the ground before it was smashed in again. Zhui, who had experienced Xiao Xian's strength before, was speechless. Tao Zheng and the others' jaws dropped to the ground. They wanted to raise their arms and cheer. All hail the elder! They watched as Xiao Xian rubbed his fists. He ran to the side and picked up a boulder that the beast was using to hide its head. He tossed it in the air and threw it again. The boulder cracked, but the beast's head was still fine. Still struggling? Fine again. Tao Zheng and the rest couldn't help but feel sorry for the bone beast when they saw Xiao Xian throw one rock after another at it. Why did he have to collect so many stones? He deserved it. Chapter 385. The beast was knocked out, and it looked like it would be out for a long time. Even if it woke up soon, there was no need to worry. Xiao Xian would hit it again when he sensed something was wrong. Besides, other than Xiao Xian, Tao Zheng and the others were watching too. Tao Zheng and the others walked over shakily. After making sure that the beast was really unconscious, they got bolder and tied it up with vines. They specifically used vines that were thick and tough to break, trapping the beast like a cocoon. Its bulging mouth was also tied up. Other than breathing, the bone beast could not move freely. The most it could do was move its hooves. Xiao Xian watched as Tao Zheng and the others touched the beast here and there after tying it up. Some of the bolder ones even lifted the beast's mouth to look at its teeth. The unconscious beast's head muscles were relaxed. Other than the armor-like shell covering most of its body, parts like its mouth and nostrils were still soft. The weaknesses that had been sealed during battle were now exposed. After touching it, the group worked together to drag the unconscious beast to a resting place. Although the hunting teams had split up to hunt, the resting place was still the same. They had to carry such a huge beast to a resting place before hunting other prey. The beast was huge, but the Yin Jiao people were strong too. If one person could not carry it, they would pull it together. If they could not carry it, they would carry it together. Xiao Xian, is everyone in your tribe as strong as you? Are there a lot of advanced totemic warriors our age? Tao Zheng asked after a while. The others with Tao Zheng also looked at Xiao Xian. Most of them lived near the top of the mountain, so they knew more than the others. Some of the information came from their own inquiries, while some came from their elders. For example, they learned about Xiao Xian's true origins from their elders. It was no wonder Tao Zheng asked that. If they knew that the other Yinjiao tribe was as strong as Xiao Xian, they would be under a lot of pressure. They used to think that they were strong in their own tribe, but Xiao Xian's appearance was a huge shock. Xiao Xian smiled and shook his head when he heard Tao Zheng's question. No, there aren't many young advanced totemic warriors. However, there are still many powerful people. Tao Zheng and the others relaxed when they heard Xiao Xian say that there were not many advanced totemic warriors. As expected, there were not many people like Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian was an elder after all. He was the only elder in all the Yinjiao tribes combined. Along the way, if they found other prey that they were satisfied with, they would put the bone beast down and go hunting. After all, they could carry more prey with them. Xiao Xian gave the others the chance to hunt while he watched over the beast in case it woke up and caused trouble. While Tao Zheng and the rest were hunting, Xiao Xian noticed the bone beast was waking up. He found a large rock nearby and hit it hard to make it faint again. Resting place. After a day of hunting, many hunting groups would go there to take a rest. Some of them who had gone further away might spend the night outside, but most of them would still go to the resting place so that they could sleep peacefully. The tribe's resting place in this forest was on a mountain. The trees on the mountain were not too dense. There were caves, both natural and man-made. They could store some smaller prey and were enough for everyone in the hunting team to take a rest. The easier prey would be slaughtered in other places and then moved into the cave. The more troublesome prey, such as the dino head from last time, would be tied up and brought back. Then, everyone would discuss how to divide it. A few tribesmen stood outside the rested area, keeping an eye on the forest in case other beasts attacked. The people standing on higher ground saw movement in the forest and whistled to the people below, signaling them to pay attention. Soon, they realized that it wasn't a ferocious beast that had attacked. Instead, it was their own people who had brought their prey over, and it was a big guy. When the tribesmen got closer, they realized it was Tao Zheng's group. Everyone in the tribe knew how strong Tao Zheng and the others were. Every time they went hunting, Tao Zheng's team would always catch a lot of good prey. There was no point in being envious. After all, their strength was there. Tao Zheng, Zhu, and Wu Zhan. These three outstanding young warriors were famous even in other tribes. Tao Zheng, what did you hunt this time? The guard outside was about to ask Tao Zheng, who was walking at the front, but when he saw the prey they brought out, he was so shocked that he stopped talking. Bone beast. The two guards shouted in shock. What? Bone beast? The others heard and ran over to take a look. It wasn't that no one had ever caught a bone beast before. It was just that compared to other prey, it was too rare. Most of the time, they spent a lot of time and effort only to end up with nothing. If they weren't careful, they would pay a heavy price. To their surprise, Tao Zheng's team managed to hunt a bone beast this time. They counted the number of people in the team. None of them were missing, not even the slightest bit of injury. Under everyone's gazes, Tao Zheng and the others couldn't help blushing. They hadn't hunted the bone beast, and they hadn't even had a chance to attack it. As for the small injuries on their bodies, they were from hunting other prey. They had nothing to do with the bone beast. Elder Xiao Xian caught it, said Tao Zheng. The others didn't believe him. To them, how could Xiao Xian hunt this beast alone? This wasn't a baby bone beast. But with Tao Zheng's team explaining, the others were curious too. They helped to move the bone beast to a safer spot and asked curiously. There were 3 girls in Tao Zheng's group. They didn't have to be so tense and were much more active. Lin, did Xiao Xian really hunt this beast? One of the warriors asked. Of course. The girl named Lin excitedly told the others about Xiao Xian's hunt. Xiao Xian had already been pulled aside by Duo Kong for questioning. Duo Kong didn't care if he could hunt a bone beast or not. He had hunted one when he was younger, but it was done as a team. Right now, Duo Kong was more concerned about Xiao Xian's condition and whether he was injured. The chief and shamaness had warned him before they left. They asked about the details of the hunt, and Xiao Xian answered all of them. Duo Kong was relieved when he heard that Xiao Xian had adapted well. He even asked Xiao Xian to learn about the herbs they brought back from the hunt. Xiao Xian had learned about herbs from Jiju. The plants in the forest were unfamiliar. Different places had different types of plants. After learning about the herbs and eating barbecued meat, everyone fell asleep after a day of hunting. The guards outside took turns to keep watch. After a good night's sleep, they woke up the next day feeling relaxed and not tired at all. Xiao Xian walked out of the cave and looked at the forest in the distance. He took a deep breath, stretched his arms, and stretched his body. Naturally, there would be people guarding the prey in the hunting grounds. They were all experienced hunters, so Xiao Xian didn't have to worry. The next day's hunt was about to begin. They had to continue hunting. As winter approached, there would be fewer animals. They had to be prepared. Chapter 386. Every year when winter approached, the tribe would go out to hunt more frequently. If it weren't for the limited manpower, they would definitely hunt for longer periods of time. Because every year when winter approached, the tribe would prepare animal skins and let people take them to the slave owners to sell, and then buy some other things. When the weather turned cold, the slave owners who lived far away from the mountains and forests would have an increased demand for animal skins. Relying on their slaves alone, they couldn't prepare much good stuff, so they still had to get it from the tribesmen, especially those with good fur and good leather. The price of selling them was more than twice as high as other times. Food, bronze, and other things that the tribe couldn't produce themselves, they would use this method to exchange for them. If the family had the means, they would buy some rare things from the slave owners and bring them back. All of this required the support of prey. Before going to bed yesterday, Xiao Xian heard many people in the team discussing what to exchange for furs. They also asked Xiao Xian, but Xiao Xian hadn't been to the slave owner's territory, so he couldn't say why. He could only wait and see. On the second day of hunting, before the sun was completely out, each team had already set off. Following Tao Zheng's team, Xiao Xian quickly passed through the mountains. Sometimes, after a short pause, Tao Zheng would introduce some of the surrounding terrain to Xiao Xian. This was the hunting route that their team often took. Xiao Xian memorized all the dangerous places, ferocious beasts, and dangerous or medicinal plants around. When they passed by a dry river, Xiao Xian's footsteps suddenly stopped and looked over there. Seeing Xiao Xian stop, the others also stopped. After yesterday's hunting, the people in the team wouldn't underestimate Xiao Xian. In terms of strength, even the stubborn Jue had to admit that Xiao Xian was a little stronger than them. "What's wrong?" Tao Zheng asked. Looking at the dry riverbed, they didn't find anything strange. They had been here many times and were very familiar with it. Xiao Xian stared in that direction. "You guys wait here. I'll go take a look." With that, he quickly walked over. There were no dangerous, fierce beasts around, so Tao Zheng simply walked over and asked, "What did you find?" Xiao Xian remained silent. He wasn't sure either. The riverbed here was 20 to 30 meters wide, and it seemed to be wider in the distance, but it was not deep. During the rainy season, the river will rise, but at the end of the year, the river level will drop and dry up. Tao Zheng explained to Xiao Xian, "There's water here most of the year, but it's only dry at the end of the year. But when there's water here, we won't get close, because there are some dangerous fish here." Xiao Xian walked to the side and didn't go down. He looked at the dry riverbed, but if he stepped in, he would sink right in. The bottom was soft mud, but the top of the mud was dry and cracked. Weeds grew out of the cracks in the mud, and they were growing quite well. However, Xiao Xian wasn't interested in that. His target was the rocks on the riverbed. "Do you have a spear? Let me borrow it." Xiao Xian turned around and asked someone to lend him a tool. "Use mine." Duo Li hurriedly handed over the spear he always carried. "Thanks." Xiao Xian took the spear and picked up the nearest rock on the riverbed. The stones exposed from the riverbed were lifted up high by the spearhead and flew toward Xiao Xian. After catching the rock, Xiao Xian wiped away some of the dry mud on the surface of the rock and carefully examined it. He rubbed his fingers on the rock to feel it. "What's different about these rocks?" Tao Zheng asked. In his opinion, these rocks were no different from other rocks. They weren't big either, so they couldn't be made into stone tools. Xiao Xian shook his head. "It's just a guess." After picking up 2 more rocks, Xiao Xian put the 3 fist-sized rocks into his animal skin bag. Then, he walked along the riverbed and looked into the distance. "The scary fish you're talking about, the ones with hard scales, sharp teeth for claws, and a long tail. Are they the ones that can swim in the water and walk on land?" Xiao Xian asked. Before Tao Zheng could answer, Duo Li and the others nodded. Yes, that's it." "Xiao Xian, you've seen them before?" At first, they wanted to hunt some of those fish, but then they realized that they were too dangerous and there were too many of them. So, when the weather was warm and the water level in the river rose, they would avoid this place. At the end of the year, when the river dried up and the fish left, they would come back. Touching the animal skin bag with the rocks, Xiao Xian asked again, "Where does this river lead to?" The others didn't know the answer to this question, but Tao Zheng did. He heard it from an old hunter who used to come here. It's said that there's an even wider river ahead. That river can cut through the entire forest. If you follow that river, you might see the sea. But it's too far, and no one in the tribe has seen it before. I only heard it from some tribesmen who came from there. Into the sea? Xiao Xian lowered his head and thought. Xiao Xian stopped because he felt that the rocks on the bed looked familiar. He held one in his hand and felt that the texture was familiar too. That year, when he brought the tribe across the river and left the drumming tribe, a crocodile gave him a rock. It was said that the drumming tribe's water moonstones came from that rock. The drumming tribe had never been here before, so they couldn't have anything to do with this place. But crocodiles were different. Maybe the drumming tribe's crocodiles wouldn't come here, but what about other crocodiles? Were there other crocodiles like the drumming tribe that picked up rocks from the sea and spat them into the river? That was hard to say. "Let's go," Xiao Xian said. The team still had to continue hunting. They couldn't be delayed because of him. Duo Li looked at the leaving team and the rocks on the bed. He ran over and picked one up with his spear. Ever since he saw Xiao Xian fight the bone beast alone, Duo Li was impressed by this young elder, who wasn't much older than him. He believed in Xiao Xian's abilities. Since Xiao Xian thought that the rocks were strange, he brought one himself to study. Maybe he could find something. The others saw what Duo Li did and wondered if they should bring one too. But the team had already left, and it wasn't convenient to go back. Whatever, they'd come back next time. There was still one more hunt before winter anyway. Other than Xiao Xian's unique way of hunting the bone beast on the first day, they went back to their old ways for the next few days. The Yinjiao people valued individual ability, but they also valued teamwork. Xiao Xian, Tao Zheng, and the rest hunted some good prey. Other than that, Xiao Xian also used vines to weave a net and caught a few tapirs. The tapirs they caught were one of the smaller species of tapirs. They were normal animals that could be eaten. They were very timid and would run away at the slightest movement. They hid in a hidden spot with dense foliage and only came out when the danger was over. They had different colored patterns on their skin and looked like they were wearing camouflage clothing. When they hid in the bushes, it was hard to spot them. The babies of these tapirs were even more timid, so they weren't as curious as other animals. They would stick close to their mother and never leave alone. This way of survival allowed this seemingly harmless species to survive until now. Tao Zheng and the rest didn't care about prey like these, but Xiao Xian caught one. It was a female tapir with a litter of babies. When they were discovered, they were being chased by predators and ran into Xiao Xian's net. Xiao Xian caught them all. Xiao Xian didn't eat these normal animals. He caught them as gifts. Hunting time was over and the teams were almost done with their prey. It was time to return to the tribe. Everyone gathered at the resting area and sorted out the prey of their respective teams before carrying them back. The route from the resting area to the tribe overlapped with the route of the Taiha tribe. Although the territories of the two tribes were different and the hunting areas were also different, This section of the road was shared. It was flat and easy to walk on, suitable for teams with prey. The path was made by walking. The hunting teams of the two tribes often stepped on it, and the trees and grass in the way were all cut down. Duo Kong was in a good mood because of the good harvest and the successful hunt. He opened his mouth and roared. The others also sang along. With so many people singing together, the burst of energy had a certain deterrent effect on the nearby beasts. No beast came close. When they went out, they weren't so arrogant because they didn't want to chase away their prey. But when they came back, they didn't have to worry. At the Y-shaped intersection, the Taiha people were carrying their prey onto the shared path. When they heard the singing from the Yinjiao team, the leader was disgusted. Why are we meeting them again? His good mood had been ruined. Leader, Yinjiao, don't worry about them. The leader's face was wooden. Keep walking and pretend they don't exist. However, the Yinjiao people's presence was too strong. They couldn't ignore them even if they wanted to. When the Flaming Horn tribesmen reached the public walkway from the other side of the road, the two teams met up. Duo Kong glanced at the prey brought by the Taiha team and let out a strange laugh. Haha. The Taiha team leader's face darkened. What? Are you looking down on us? Oh no, I'm not looking down on you. Really, Duo Kong said. Then he turned around and yelled, Duo Li, take your prey and walk faster. Why are you taking so long with that small amount of prey? The people behind him didn't say anything. They seemed to have formed a tacit agreement. After Duo Kong said that, Xiao Xian noticed that the people in the team were energized. Then, Duo Li and the others carried the bone beast and walked quickly to the front of the team. Seeing the huge bone beast, the Taiha people were speechless. The leader's face twitched and turned green. Xiao Xian was happy to see this. He carried the prey and chased after them. On the other side, the Taiha team leader was about to retort when he heard an ah behind him. He forgot what he wanted to say. What ah? The leader turned around and roared. Ignoring the leader's expression, a young warrior jumped out and pointed at Xiao Xian. Leader, it's him. Chapter 387. The leader of the Taiha tribe was stunned for a moment, but he quickly realized what it's him meant. The clear fruit. The person who stole their clear fruit was the young man in the Yinjiao team, carrying a pile of prey. Stop! The leader of the Taiha tribe roared and took 2 big steps toward Xiao Xian. He was so agitated that the veins on his neck bulged. When the Taiha people moved, Duo Kong moved too. He turned and blocked their path. What? You want to steal the prey? The Yinjiao people all stopped and looked at the Taiha tribe. It looked like they were waiting for Duo Kang's order, and they would immediately throw down their prey and start fighting. The Taiha tribe, the leader of the Taiha tribe tried to control himself, but this was not the time to fight. He suppressed his anger and pointed at Xiao Xian. He asked Duo Kong, who was blocking his path, who is he? As Yinjiao's neighbors, the Taiha tribe did not know Yinjiao very well, but they knew a lot about Yinjiao. They would compare people and events to each other. For example, Yinjiao's outstanding young warriors like Tao Zheng, Zhui, Wu Zhan, etc. The Taiha tribe knew about them, but Xiao Xian, the young man who stole their things, they had no impression of him at all. Duo Kong already knew why the Taiha tribesmen reacted this way. He snorted, "It's none of your business." Then, Duo Kong called his team and left, leaving the Taiha tribe to sulk. They were not as good as him, and their things were stolen. They could only admit defeat. But that person, the leader of the Taiha tribe, decided to talk to their chief about this when they got back. They did not expect Yinjiao to be hiding someone. On the other side, Xiao Xian had already learned about the clear fruit from Guang Yi. So that's the clear fruit. It had been some time since the incident. After finding the tribe, Xiao Xian put all his attention on the tribe and completely forgot that he had snatched the clear fruit from others. Sometimes he would think about it, but soon he would be delayed by other things. Moreover, when they were in the tribe, the chief and the others never asked Xiao Xian to take out the fruit. They just put it aside and forgot about it. "I left it at home. I'll bring it to you when we get back," Xiao Xian said. There's no need. Since you got it, it's yours." Duo Kong quickly waved his hand. Guang Yi had the same idea. "I don't have much use for it." it would be more effective to distribute it to the warriors in the tribe. After knowing the effects of the clear fruit, Xiao Xian didn't plan to keep all of them for himself. He decided to distribute them when he got back. The hunting team was warmly welcomed by the tribesmen. On the artificial river outside, a 10-meter-wide bridge made of thick tree trunks had been lowered. Some people came over to help carry the prey. Everyone was very happy when they heard that the hunt was fruitful. After moving the bone beast up the mountain, Xiao Xian gave the nest of tapers he caught to Zhao Ming and his brother's house. After all, when he first arrived, he stayed at their house for a night. When he heard that Xiao Xian gave him a nest of food, Zhao Ming didn't even bother to wipe the mud off his body. He ran home to take a look. There was an elder at the foot of the mountain who knew more about tapers. He told Zhao Ming to raise the nest of tapers and eat them when they were big enough. It didn't cost much anyway. If there wasn't a mother around, the baby tapers might not be able to survive. But with a mother around, it was much easier. They eat young twigs, young leaves, and fruits. Oh, and by the river in front of the tribe. They also eat the grass that grows near the water. An Annie who had tried raising tapers before shared her experience with Zhao Ming. Xiao Xian helped build a circle before he was called up the mountain. The hunting team had to split the prey, and the shamaness wanted to talk to him about something. Xiao Xian also shared some of the bone beast with Xiao Xian's team since they helped carry it. When Xiao Xian couldn't take care of it, they were the ones who kept an eye on the unconscious beast. After splitting the prey, Xiao Xian didn't go back immediately. Instead, he went to the shamaness. It was much quieter in front of the shamaness gate. No matter how happy the warriors were, they would lower their voices when they passed by, worried that they'd disturb the shamaness. "You're here." The shamaness glanced at Xiao Xian and put down the animal skin scroll. She waved, gesturing for Xiao Xian to follow her into the house. There were no windows in the room that was used to store things. If they wanted to see clearly, they would have to light a torch. But the shamaness didn't light a fire. She went straight to a table with a box on it. The shamaness came out with the box and handed it to Xiao Xian. "Take these." Xiao Xian recognized the box. He opened it and saw 3 elders' bone ornaments. "All for me." Xiao Xian was shocked. "Yes." The shamaness nodded and sighed. "The ancestors would be more willing to give them to you." On the day of the welcoming ceremony, the 3 bone ornaments did light up. But after the ceremony, they dimmed again. They weren't as dim as before, but they couldn't compare to the one Xiao Xian was wearing. Ever since Yin Jiao's 2 tribes separated, the bone ornaments never lit up again. There were no more elders in the tribe. Xiao Xian was an exception. Seeing Xiao Xian hesitate, the shamaness said, "If the 2 tribes reunite in the future and a new elder appears, it won't be too late to take them out." "No, I'm worried about losing them," Xiao Xian said. The shamaness' face twitched. She said in a low voice, "Then wear them. Can't I leave them at home?" "No." Seeing that Xiao Xian still wanted to say something, the shamaness stomped her cane. "Wear them now." "Okay." There was a protrusion on the back of each bone ornament. There was a hole in the protrusion for a rope. Xiao Xian took off the bone ornament necklace he was wearing, untied the rope, and strung the other 3 on. Then he tied the rope and put it back on. The difference was obvious when the 4 of them were put together. Compared to the one Xiao Xian always wore, the ball in the middle was much dimmer. However, after Xiao Xian put the necklace back on, the shamaness noticed that the ball in the middle of the 3 bone ornaments was brightening at a speed visible to the naked eye, until it was the same as the previous one. Seeing this, the shamaness felt relieved. Sure enough, she had to put the bone ornaments in Xiao Xian's hands. Wearing the 4 bone ornaments, Xiao Xian came out from the shamaness' place. He picked some of the game he had hunted and asked someone to help him cook meat soup. There was no big pot, so Xiao Xian went to take out the big stone pot that had always been in the tribe's warehouse. It was made by the ancestors of the tribe when they came here. Sometimes, when the tribe held large-scale celebrations, they would take out the big stone pot and cook a big pot for everyone to share. The first day, they cooked on the mountain, the second day on the mountainside, and the third day at the foot of the mountain. They cooked for 3 days in a row. Xiao Xian hunted so much game that he couldn't finish it all by himself. Besides, he originally wanted to hunt more to share with everyone. As for the clear fruit, after Xiao Xian cut it open, he found about 20 small seeds inside. He took half of it to the chief as a gift from Xiao Xian to the tribe. The other half was kept by Xiao Xian. If anyone needed it in the future, they could exchange it with Xiao Xian. After settling those matters, Xiao Xian finally had some free time. He returned to the house and took out the 3 stones he brought back from the dry riverbed to study them. On the table next to the window, Xiao Xian washed the 3 stones and placed them in a well-lit area. He carefully examined them and scraped them with a knife. The hardness was similar to the stone he got from Mute Crocodile. The quality and color of the stones were very similar, but he still couldn't tell if they were the same as the drumming tribe's water moon stones. After all, there was no drumming tribe here, so these stones couldn't have become water moon stones, right? There was no other way. Xiao Xian let out a long sigh. He turned one of the stones in his hand and recalled the harvest of water moon stones when he was in the drumming tribe. Speaking of which, the reason why the water moon stones could be successfully transformed was because of the fire seed. As he was thinking, Xiao Xian's expression suddenly froze. He immediately gathered his thoughts and observed the changes in his mind. In his mind, the totemic flame was still there, but the shell covering it was different. It was flashing. The light shield outside the fire seed flashed. Every time it flashed, it became brighter. At the same time, Xiao Xian could feel a thin thread extending out from the shell. The thread traveled along Xiao Xian's arm to his palm, then to the stone. Rustle, rustle, rustle. It was like the sound of fine particles falling. It was the same sound that Xiao Xian had heard when he was at the water moon channel of the drumming tribe. Chapter 388. When the buzzing stopped, the line in his mind was retracted. Xiao Xian looked at the stone in his hand. Just a moment ago, it looked very ordinary, but now it was as smooth as a peeled boiled egg. The crystal had a slight coolness to it, very similar to the water moon stone. Just as he was about to move, Xiao Xian suddenly felt his vision go dark. It was like standing up after a long period of squatting. The blood circulation in the body was blocked, and the brain was deprived of oxygen, causing dizziness. He was a little tired, but after a few breaths, he felt much better. Xiao Xian looked at the stone in his hand again. It looked similar to the water moon stone. Although there were slight differences in color and transparency, it was not much different. Was it really a water moon stone? Yang Guang was just right outside the window, illuminating the room. Xiao Xian closed the window and closed the door. The room suddenly darkened. If it was a water moon stone in such a dim environment, it would definitely emit a sparkling light. However, it turned out that it was not the same. The stone in Xiao Xian's hand also emitted light, but the light it emitted was very dim. It could not illuminate the room at all. If there was an animal skin scroll with words written on it next to this stone, it might not be able to see the words clearly. This kind of brightness could not be compared to a water moon stone. However, knowing that it was similar to a water moon stone was still useful information for Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian did not immediately turn the other 2 stones into the same state. He planned to sit down and rest first. He had used a lot of energy to make the stone just now, so he felt very tired. At this time, someone knocked on the door. "Elder Xiao Xian, are you there? The chief wants to see you." Someone shouted outside the room. Xiao Xian responded and put the stone on the table. He opened the window and patted some dust off his hands. This was left behind when the stone was formed. Getting up and opening the door, Xiao Xian followed the other person to the chief. Xiao Xian placed the crystal on the table by the window. The yang guang outside the window shone in and shone on the stone. The entire stone seemed to be bathed in a layer of warm light. On the other side, Xiao Xian was called to the chief's place. When he entered the house, there were already many people there, similar to the last time he came. Duo Kong, Guang Yi, and other important members of the hunting team, as well as a few respected elders of the tribe, were all sitting there. There were a few more people from the hunting group, but the shaman did not join in the fun. "Xiao Xian, come over here." Chief Zheng Luo pointed at the seat next to him. In the past, this seat belonged to the shaman. Even if the shaman didn't come, no one dared to sit there. This was the first time Duo Kong and the others had seen someone sitting in that position, and the shamaness and the leader didn't even say anything. As an elder, he had the right to do so. This time, Zheng Luo had called Xiao Xian over to discuss the trade at the slave owner's territory. They would not go to the royal city. Ever since they got into trouble there, they had not been there all these years. However, they still went to other cities a few times a year. It was impossible for everyone to go, so they were here to discuss the list of people who would go, as well as some things to take note of. This kind of meeting would be held twice before departure. Today was an impromptu meeting, so they didn't inform them beforehand. I heard that there's more demand for white animal skins this year. Do you have any white animal skins left? Sort them out properly and raise the price when the time comes. The chief told everyone what he heard. After hunting, the tribesmen would hoard the fur they didn't need. White fur was their least favorite. First, it was easy to get dirty, and second, it was too conspicuous. Wearing it in the forest was like looking for death. However, white beasts were rare in the forest, and most of them appeared in the winter or in the snowy mountains further away. Who would go there for no reason? Chief, do you still want spotted ones? Duo Kong asked, rubbing his hands. Their family had hoarded a lot of spotted animal skins this year. Last year, the slave owners liked this color, so they sold it at high price. As for the other colors, they kept it for themselves. Well, Zheng Luo thought about what he heard. I heard that they don't like it this year. Duo Kong stopped rubbing his hands, the smile on his face crumbling. Why do they change every year? Zheng Luo ignored Duo Kang's annoyance and turned to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian, you came to the tribe late, so you didn't hoard much. You don't have anything to sell, but you can come and take a look. You can help everyone when the time comes. Zheng Luo hoped that Xiao Xian could learn more about the situation here, but he was also worried that Xiao Xian wouldn't have anything to sell. If Xiao Xian went there and saw the other people in the tribe selling happily, Xiao Xian wouldn't feel good just by looking at them. Don't worry, I know. Xiao Xian smiled. Duo Kong and Guang Yi looked up at Xiao Xian at the same time, but didn't say anything. After the meeting, the chief invited everyone for a meal. The meat was the bone beast meat that Xiao Xian brought out. They ate, drank, and chatted. Although there weren't many seasonings here, the tribesmen were smart enough to add some fruits and leaves to the soup. It tasted good. Xiao Xian had to learn from them. I haven't eaten in so many years, it still tastes the same. An elder said, smacking his lips. Another elder also talked about how they hunted bone beasts years ago. He even told Xiao Xian where the bones could be used. Xiao Xian stayed at the top of the mountain until sunset. It was getting dark before he returned to his house. However, when he returned, he found many people surrounding his house. What's going on? Xiao Xian asked. Hey, Xiao Xian, you're finally back. Duo Li squeezed through the crowd and ran over excitedly. Elder Xiao Xian, what's that in your house? Although the house wasn't locked, they didn't dare to enter. Even if the windows were open, they wouldn't dare to pick up the glowing thing. They weren't close enough to Xiao Xian to take things from him. Besides, Xiao Xian was an elder, second only to the shaman and the chief. How could they just take things from an elder's house? That was why they could only suppress their curiosity when they saw the glowing stone. Now that Xiao Xian was back, they were all excited. In the house, Xiao Xian didn't quite understand. He looked towards the house and understood. Although there were many people blocking the view, they could still see the light coming from the windows. Water moon stone. No, that wasn't it. The light wasn't exactly the same as the water moon stone. The color of the light was less cold and had a hint of warmth. The crowd in front of him was curious. When they saw Xiao Xian coming over, they quickly made way and fought to ask their own questions. Without answering the chattering cha-cha, Xiao Xian opened the door and walked over to pick up the crystal on the table. Even Xiao Xian was puzzled. It wasn't like this before he left. The stone wasn't this bright during the day. Why was it so bright at night? It was almost as bright as the water moon stone. He looked at the other two stones on the table. They were still two very ordinary stones. They didn't shine at all and were inconspicuous. Seeing Duo Li and the others craning their necks to look at them with expectant and curious eyes, Xiao Xian passed the crystal to them. When the crystal was in Xiao Xian's hands, the others didn't dare to touch it. But when Duo Li took it, everyone started fighting for it, especially those who were close to Duo Li. They all squeezed over, wanted to take a look for themselves. It wasn't good to make a ruckus in front of Xiao Xian. Duo Li hurriedly spoke to Xiao Xian. After Xiao Xian agreed, he took the stone to a more spacious area outside the house and left with the noisy crowd. Once the crowd left, the surroundings became much quieter. Xiao Xian sat by the table and picked up the other 2 stones, wondering what was going on. Chapter 389. After a while, Duo Li returned the crystal to Xiao Xian. He was quite reluctant to give it back, as he felt that it would be much more convenient to have a glowing crystal at night, much more convenient than lighting a fire. More importantly, he had never seen it before. It was his first time seeing it, and he felt that it was very rare. Xiao Xian, where did you get this crystal? Duo Li asked curiously. Yes, Elder Xiao Xian, where did you find this stone? Can you tell us about it? Even Tao Zheng and the others came over. Before this, they had never seen Xiao Xian take out something like this. They had heard of glowing stones, but they had never seen one with their own eyes. It was said that the slave masters had some of these things, but they didn't know where they got them. Xiao Xian took the crystal and said, "This stone." Everyone pricked up their ears. I picked it out from the dried river that day. As he spoke, Xiao Xian took the other 2 stones from the table and showed them to them. Because of the glowing crystal, the room seemed to be lit by a small table lamp, illuminating the 2 stones Xiao Xian took out very clearly. How is this possible? Duo Li exclaimed. This is it. Tao Zheng picked up the other 2 stones. No matter how he looked at them, he couldn't see any difference between these 2 stones and the glowing one. Xiao Xian nodded. How did it change? Cut it open? No, it's useless to cut it open. As for how it changed, I actually don't understand it either, Xiao Xian said. He really didn't understand, so naturally, he couldn't explain it to them. They asked a few more questions about the glowing stone. As the night deepened, Duo Li and the others reluctantly left. After everyone left, Xiao Xian had time to study the stones again. This glowing stone wasn't so bright during the day. At that time, it was placed. Xiao Xian thought for a moment, his gaze sweeping across the table, then the window, and then outside. Yang Wang? Or could it be that this stone only glows at night? Regardless of the situation, Xiao Xian intended to try again. Weren't there still 2 more stones? He would find the answer if he tried again. Picking up one of the remaining 2 stones, Xiao Xian mobilized the totemic power in his body. However, when the totemic power in his body was active, it was not the totemic flame that worked, but the light shield that covered the totemic flame. When the light shield lit up, even the totemic flames that had been rolling inside would appear much more subdued. A ray of light extended from the light shield and flowed through Xiao Xian's body from head to toe. It then flowed along his arm to the stone in his hand. This time, Xiao Xian paid close attention to its changes. He could clearly feel that the outer layer of the stone in his hand had been peeled off. With a rustling sound, the outer layer of the stone shattered into a layer of powder and fell to the ground. Xiao Xian didn't need to personally brush it off. The powder naturally fell off, leaving only the crystal behind. However, the new crystal did not glow. It was not even as bright as the first stone during the day. Could it be that it really needed the sun? After bringing back 3 stones, Xiao Xian planned to leave the 3rd stone until the sun came out tomorrow to try again. Just like the first stone, after transforming the 2nd stone, Xiao Xian also felt a wave of exhaustion. He sat in the same spot for a while before packing up and going to sleep. However, while Xiao Xian slept well, some people didn't. For example, Duo Li, who had also brought back a stone, was studying the stone in the house. He was so noisy that his father, Duo Kong, woke up in the middle of the night and beat him up before he quieted down. However, he was only slightly quieter and gentler in his actions. When the sun came out the next day, Xiao Xian placed the non-glowing crystal that he had transformed last night where Yang Guang was. Then, he used the same method to transform the third stone. When Xiao Xian tried the third stone, it was under the sun. He held the stone with his palm, facing upwards, so that it was fully in contact with Yang Guang. After the transformation, Xiao Xian brought the stone into the house and closed the doors and windows to block out the light. Sure enough, the third stone was able to glow in the dark house. Although it wasn't very bright, it was much better than the previous two stones. The only difference was that it was in contact with more Yang Guang during the transformation. As for the stone that didn't glow last night, after Yang Guang placed it in the dark for a while, it shone brightly. Although it wasn't as bright as the drumming tribe's water moon stone, it wasn't any weaker than the first stone. Xiao Xian, Elder Xiao Xian. Duo Li hurriedly ran over. What's wrong? Xiao Xian asked when he saw Duo Li sweating profusely from his anxiety. This. Duo Li took out the stone in his hand, his face dejected. It's broken. Yesterday, he only wanted to study it carefully to see if he could make a stone like Xiao Xian's. But in a moment of carelessness, he broke the stone into pieces. I only wanted to cut off a little bit, but who knew that this stone would break into pieces like this? Duo Li said. Xiao Xian looked at the broken stone in his hand and said, This requires totemic power, not brute force. It was his own fault for not reminding him. Xiao Xian handed one of the 3 crystals to Duo Li. Take this. The other 2 changed too? Duo Li held the crystal in his hand like it was a treasure. Thinking of something, Xiao Xian asked Duo Li, Are there very few glowing stones here? Yes, very few, Duo Li said. I heard that when people from other tribes found glowing stones like this, they would sell them to slave masters in exchange for a lot of food and gold. That was strange. Xiao Xian fell into deep thought. When he was there, although many people liked the water moonstone, and it was almost a universal currency, it wasn't rare to this extent. There were other glowing stones too, but they were much rarer than the water moonstone. Why was it that after the people here merged with the fire seed, their abilities increased, but many special things disappeared completely? Could it be that it was because of the fire seed? People gathered all the power of the fire seed in their bodies, so they couldn't obtain the stones and couldn't change them? With this question in mind, Xiao Xian went to find the shamaness. After hearing this, she frowned and thought for a long time. It was ironic. As tribesmen, they had never seen a fire seed. If this was on the other side of the sea, other than the wanderers, the other tribesmen wouldn't believe it. But here it was true. No tribe had a fire seed burning in their fire pit. The people of the Flaming Horn tribe could only see the totemic flame in their minds. However, they had never seen the flame that their ancestors brought over. No matter if it was stormy, rainy, or snowy weather, it would still burn in the fire pit without any firewood. They had never seen it with their own eyes. They only knew about it through the drawings their ancestors left behind. Even if the shamaness could see more through the Wu roll, it was far from being as clear as the real thing. The shamaness couldn't give Xiao Xian a definite answer, so Xiao Xian could only find the answer himself. After giving the remaining 2 glowing stones to the shamaness and the chief, Xiao Xian decided to go into the forest again and bring back more stones. Knowing that Xiao Xian was going to dig for stones, Duo Li, Tao Zheng, and the others were more enthusiastic than the other. Almost everyone in the hunting team came over, including Duo Kong and Guang Yi. They said they had to protect them in case they ran into trouble, but in reality, they were curious too. They wanted to know where the stones came from. This time, there weren't many people going out. They didn't bring along tools for setting traps, but large bags and tightly woven nets. The Taiha tribesmen who had been observing Yinjiao quickly reported this to their superiors. But no matter what, they couldn't guess what the Yinjiao people were up to. Did they find some treasure? The Taiha tribesmen didn't understand. On the other side, the people who went into the forest had a clear goal. They weren't hunting, so they didn't pay attention to anything else. Even if a fat dinosaur walked past, they didn't give it a second glance. Compared to the dinosaur and other meaty beasts, they were more interested in the glowing stones. If they could get their hands on those glowing stones, they could exchange them for more bronze weapons from the slave masters. That was the most important thing. They rushed to the dried-up riverside. Duo Kong saw all kinds of weeds growing on the riverbed and the ordinary stones. He couldn't believe it. That's it. This was completely different from the gemstones with halos he imagined. He was wondering why they hadn't seen any of these stones before, but Xiao Xian found them the moment he arrived. These stones had a common face. If it wasn't for Xiao Xian, they wouldn't have found these treasures even if they walked 1,000,000 times. That's it. Duo Li couldn't take it anymore. He took out a long wooden pole that he had prepared earlier. There was a shovel-like object at the front of the pole. He shoveled and lifted the stones from the riverbed to the bank. Xiao Xian hadn't done anything yet, but the others were already busy. They had a clear division of labor. Some were in charge of scooping up the stones, while the others were in charge of picking them up. The dried mud on the riverbed was poked here and there by the wooden pole. The dried upper layer cracked open and some of the soil was pushed aside, revealing the mud underneath. And in the mud, they could see some stones. There's stones under there too? Duo Kong snatched the pole from Duo Li and shoveled it into the mud. There really are. The stones covered in mud were lifted onto the table. Ignoring the stench of the mud, they wiped them with leaves and handed them to Xiao Xian. Are these yours too? Duo Li asked. Xiao Xian took them and examined them. Then, in front of everyone, he held the muddy stone and activated his totemic power. The shamaness had said that they were all trustworthy people, so Xiao Xian wouldn't hide it from her. Plus, if everyone could have this skill, they would be able to produce more crystals. It would be a good thing for the flaming horns. Realizing what Xiao Xian was about to do, everyone stopped what they were doing and stared unblinkingly at the small stone in Xiao Xian's hand. They didn't want to miss anything. Even Guang Yi, who was usually serious, couldn't help but look curious. However, he wasn't interested in the stone in Xiao Xian's hand. Instead, he was interested in the totemic power around Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian came from another Yinjia tribe. The fire seed was still there. Guang Yi was curious about the differences between the two tribes. Chapter 390. Squeak, squeak. The sound of something falling to the ground was heard. The muddy stone in Xiao Xian's hand seemed to have been washed away by an invisible current. Starting from the top, the outer layer of the stone crumbled and fell along with the mud, revealing the smooth surface of the crystal. Duo Li's eyes almost popped out. It looked like the crystal was wrapped inside the stone. As long as the stone was cut open, it could be seen. But he knew very well that if he cut open the stone, there would be nothing. The stone would even crumble into pieces. How is this possible? Duo Li took the crystal from Xiao Xian's hand and looked at it closely. There was still some mud on the crystal. He wiped it off with his hand and covered it with an opaque animal skin bag. There was indeed light, but it was not very bright. We need to bask in the sun for a while, said Xiao Xian. Oh, okay, let's bask in the sun. Duo Li held the stone and stood straight where there were the most Yangguang. Xiao Xian couldn't stand it, so he said, just put it on the ground. After putting the stone where Yangguang was, Xiao Xian told everyone to continue fishing for stones. They would leave immediately after they finished fishing. They could still make it back to the tribe before tonight. Knowing that this dry river was full of treasures, everyone became excited and sped up their actions. Xiao Xian told them about the drumming tribe and the water moonstones. It was the first time they heard such a story. Everyone thought it was very strange. Was it caused by the fire seed? If there is a tribe that can continuously produce water moonstones, there will only be one result, said Duo Kong. They will either perish or become slaves, added Guang Yi. That was why everyone would only say that they dug it out from the forest. They would never say that Xiao Xian made it. Everyone who knew about this was the same story. They scooped up more than 10 bags of stones back to the tribe. If it wasn't for the lack of bags and the lack of time to weave more bags, they would have scooped up more. After returning to the tribe, Xiao Xian washed the stone and told them about his experience in transforming the stone. After all, the power that transformed the stone came from the eggshell-shaped cover and not from Yinjiao's totemic flames. The result was just as Xiao Xian had expected. No one else was able to change the stone no matter how hard they tried. Even if the shamans did it personally, the result would be the same. Totem power and legacy power were used one after another, but they were still ineffective. Everyone gave up after trying. The totem power fluctuation around Xiaoxian was different from theirs. It wasn't unfamiliar, but it wasn't familiar either. It felt strange, but it was something they couldn't do. With a shortcut closed, it was impossible for everyone not to be disappointed. How about this? If I have time, I'll make more. Even if I can't trade it with the slave masters, I can keep it for everyone to use, said Xiaoxian. The shamans shook their heads. Looking at Xiaoxian's tired face, they said, "Do what you can. No one knows if this transformation will harm you or not. In the past, without these crystals, everyone still lived well. It's fine." After everyone left, only Xiaoxian and the shamans were left. The shamans asked Xiaoxian how he felt. Other than being tired, were there any other injuries? Xiaoxian had just made 2 crystals. "I'm really fine. I'll be fine after some rest," said Xiaoxian confidently. "No matter what, you have to be careful," reminded the shamans. "Yes, I know." Back in his house, Xiaoxian looked at the big bag of stones on the ground and thought about what happened today. Other than him, no one else could successfully transform a stone into a stone. The power he possessed did not repel the totemic flames of the Flaming Horn tribe. It could also be used on the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and even the slave masters. What kind of power was this? Xiaoxian didn't know. The only thing he was sure of was that it had something to do with the fire seed. Over the next 2 days, Xiaoxian tried to transform more than 10 crystals. Every time he found that the outer cover in his mind darkened, that was the limit. He stopped to rest, slept for a night, and was full of energy the next day. Compared to the beginning, Xiaoxian didn't feel as tired after transforming a single stone. He didn't see black after the transformation, but he couldn't take it anymore. These crystals needed to absorb Yangguang. They couldn't last as long as the Drumming tribe's water moonstones. These crystals could only last for 2 days after absorbing Yangguang. They would only continue to grow dimmer after absorbing Yangguang. Fortunately, there was no radiation, so it was harmless to humans. Xiaoxian didn't know how long the situation would last, but it definitely wouldn't last as long as the water moonstones. However, it was enough for daily use or to exchange for things. Soon, it was time to go out. The list of people going out had already been announced. Many people wanted to go, but they still had to go through the review process. The tribe had 2 main requirements for people going out. First, don't cause trouble. For example, Chief Xiaoxian's younger brother, Zheng Cheng, who was the one who rashly pushed the door open on the first day of Xiaoxian's arrival. Zheng Luo directly excluded him. He was too rash and easily caused trouble, so they didn't let him go out for several years. Second, don't let weak people drag them down. There was also a certain danger when they went out. They might fight with other tribes, or they might fight with the slave owners. Once the fight started, it would not be like hunting at home. The weaker ones would definitely drag them down. This was also for everyone's safety. The people in the tribe packed up 2 days in advance. Sheets of leather were folded and tied up. The people who went out helped carry the things entrusted to them by the people they knew. When the time came, they would bring back the things they exchanged for and distribute them. Xiaoxian was new here, so no one asked him to bring anything. He only brought a leather bag with crystals. Xiaoxian helped the people in the team carry some things. Xiaoxian caught up with the team. The team was led by Duo Kong and left the tribe. Every time they went out at the end of the year, it wasn't just a single tribe. It was possible that several tribes worked together. It was safer that way, and they wouldn't be robbed. And Yinjiao's partner, every time, was the Taihe tribe. After all, there were only 2 tribes in the area, and they weren't enemies. Although they often had small fights, they could still work together occasionally. It was a win-win situation. Duo Kong brought a team of 100 people to the agreed meeting place with the Taihe tribe. The other side had already arrived, but they had slightly more people than the Yinjiao. After all, not every tribe was as strong as the Yinjiao people. Usually, when the 2 tribes met, they would look at each other with disdain. They would never look at each other in the eye. But today was different. Both sides were quite friendly. Although they didn't express friendliness, they didn't mock each other either. As for the Taihe tribe's evaluation, the shaman had told Xiao Xian that the reason why the Yinjiao could get along with the Taiha tribe until now was because the Taiha tribe wouldn't stab them in the back. The Yinjiao people later took revenge on the tribes that had stabbed them in the back. They even forced a tribe that was originally nearby to leave. Only the Taiha tribe had cooperated until now. In the past 1,000 years, the two sides had even intermarried. Xiao Xian saw a few familiar faces in the Taiha tribe's team. They were the people he had beaten up when he was chasing the long-clawed monkey in the forest. When they saw Xiao Xian, they were already furious. When they saw Xiao Xian smiling at them, they gritted their teeth. "What the hell are you smiling at?" Chapter 391. The teams of the two tribes got along peacefully along the way. Occasionally, they only communicated with their eyes. At most, they bared their teeth and did not directly quarrel. Even those who had been holding their breath and staring at Xiao Xian did not directly get angry or provoke Xiao Xian. In both teams, everyone was very restrained, and those who did not know how to restrain themselves were not allowed to follow them out. The people of the Taiha tribe were sizing up Xiao Xian, a relatively unfamiliar companion. After all, every time they went out in the past, the candidates were about the same, and they did not change many people. Everyone was very familiar with each other. Even Guang Yi could recognize some of them because he often saw them and got along for a long time. He could always remember some of their characteristics, not to mention the people of the Taiha tribe. However, the Yinjiao side did not pay attention to the Taiha tribe's sizing up eyes. As Duo Kong walked, he introduced Xiao Xian to Amba City, which they often went to. There were 6 major cities here, which once belonged to the 6 tribes of Ji, Chaoqiu, Yi, Feng, Mu, and Amba. They were also the 6 largest tribes at the time. However, after the Ji tribe unified the other 5 tribes, the place where the Ji tribe was located was expanded several times to form the royal city. The descendants of the 6 tribes lived in the royal city, but the cities originally built by the other 5 tribes still existed. The Yinjiao people had also been to the royal city. Duo Kong told Xiao Xian that because they had caused trouble before, they had not gone to the royal city for a long time. Instead, they went to the nearest Amba city. As one of the 6 tribes, the people of Amba had not been idle after they embarked on the path of slave owners. Some of them followed into the royal city, while others stayed in Amba city to develop. At the same time, Amba City was also the largest concentration of tribal people living in this large area. There were also wanderers here, but the status of the wanderers here was not like the one Xiao Xian had seen before. Because of the integration of the fire seed, their dependence on the tribe was much less. People became free and ambitious. Some people left the tribe to develop and become wanderers. Those who had the ability to leave the tribe and develop on their own were all extremely capable people. Otherwise, they would have been slaughtered long ago. From the tribe, with the speed of the Yinjiao people, it would take at least 3 to 5 days to reach Amba City. If the weather was good and they were lucky, the time would be shorter, but if they encountered trouble along the way, it would take even longer. This time, no one came looking for trouble. On the morning of the 4th day, the group arrived at the gate of Amba City. There were guards at the entrance of Amba City. Every team that entered the city had to hand over some items to them before they were allowed to pass. Xiao Xian saw that Duo Kong had already prepared 10 pieces of animal skin for the guards. Every 10 people had a hand in one piece, and it had to be of good quality. The man picked carefully, afraid that Duo Kong would give him something of inferior quality. After looking, the man's eyes circled around the bundle of animal skins on Duo Kang's back. He wanted to say something, but a few people came up beside Duo Kong. A dozen tall and strong Yinjiao people easily carried the large bundle of things. They moved their exposed, muscular arms and grinned silently, revealing big white teeth. The gatekeeper didn't say anything. Thinking that these were Yinjiao people with bad tempers, he would definitely be the one to suffer if they made a fuss. After weighing the pros and cons, he could only give up. Everyone knew that the Yinjiao people dared to make trouble in the royal city. The Taiha tribe benefited because they were with the Yinjiao people and were not harassed. However, The teams that entered the city later were exploited miserably. The city was much larger than the cities in the desert, and the houses were neatly built. There were houses on both sides of the street that sold cloth, pottery, food, jewelry, and so on. Duo Kong said that more than half of the people there were wanderers. After entering the city, the group went straight to their destination, which was a relatively special area in Amba City. It was specially used by tribesmen who entered the city to trade. There were no fixed shops, so it was relatively free and more dangerous. Okay, hurry up and find a place. Duo Kong waved his hand and said to the people behind him. There was no need to say more. The people behind him began to assign tasks. Some people put down the things they were carrying, and then like a forklift, they used brute force to shovel away the people in front of them, clearing an open space, and then began to set up tents. The tree trunks that had been cut down on the way were inserted into the ground, and the framework was set up. Large rolls of coarse linen were unfolded. There were many holes in many places, but no one cared as long as they could be used. The Taiha tribe set up next to the Yinjiao tribe. Looking at everyone's movements, they were very skilled, and the division of labor was clear. After a few tents were set up, the group first unloaded the goods and put them inside, letting some people guard them. The other group took out a piece of animal skin and spread it on their arms, or put it on some simple shelves so that interested traders or slave owners in Amba City could better see it. Xiao Xian helped set up the tents and spread out the animal skins, then looked to the side. Although the Taiha people also brought some animal skins, they also brought some other things. The Taiha people knew a lot about herbs, so every time they came, they would bring some herbs to sell. These sold faster than the animal skins. The people who were putting things over there saw Xiao Xian look over and immediately put on a vigilant expression. Xiao Xian calmly looked away and looked at what other tribes were doing in other places. Most of the people around sold animal skins and bones, but there were also a variety of shiny crystals. The slave owners liked to use these raw materials to make things. Xiao Xian did not take out the glowing stones at the beginning. He intended to observe them first and then set the price. There were shouts all around, and in order to attract the attention of buyers, they all boasted about the things in their hands. This one said that he had the skin of an adult tiger in the mountains, and that one said that he had the skin of a cave lion king. In short, they had to attract the attention of others first. Although the Yinjiao people's voices were loud, it was a pity that they were too honest. The skin of an adult giant bear was not as attractive as the smaller bear skin from the opposite stall. They had just boasted that it was the skin of a bear king cub, but when they were touched and recognized that it was just the skin of an ordinary cave bear, they still quibbled. Some of the stones used to cushion the table and press the tents were kicked around, and one of them rolled to Xiao Xian's side. These were all ownerless items. Everyone picked them up from the ground, or people who came here before threw them down. They were all ordinary stones. Xiao Xian picked up the stone that rolled to his feet and looked at it. The stone was not good enough to be used as a tool. However, it could be used for other things. Thinking of something, Xiao Xian took out his tools, a small stone hammer made in the tribe, and a small knife. Among the many shouts and quarrels around, a series of tinkling sounds seemed very abrupt. Some people looked in the direction of the sound, wanting to know what was making the sound, but they found that someone was actually knocking on the stone. Xiao Xian waved the small stone hammer in his hand quickly, while the other hand held the stone and kept turning it, knocking out the extra places. When the shape of the stone was not regular, it changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. What is that? It could be said that when gold and pottery were widely used, stone tools were always the easiest to ignore. So when they saw Xiao Xian playing with the stone, some of the merchants who came to see the animal skins suddenly became interested and gathered around to watch. One of them was particularly conspicuous. He was wearing a dark brown animal skin coat. His tall and burly body squeezed through the crowd and moved steadily, as if the surrounding crowd had no effect on him. His two big palms were like palm leaf fans. When he pushed, the people in front only felt layers of pressure rushing straight at them. Before they could react, they were already pushed away. Seeing that person, Duo Kang's eyes lit up. He turned his head and gave a look to the people behind him. Everyone quickly spread out the dark fur animal skins and placed them in the most conspicuous place. Chapter 392. Some people around also noticed the approaching big man. The people who were pushed aside wanted to curse, but when they saw the other party's appearance, they immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of their mouths. Most of the people present knew this person. He was a traveling merchant and was quite famous. People called him Black Bear, which was very appropriate for his appearance, especially when he was wearing a thick brown and black animal skin coat. Combined with his strong and burly figure, he really looked like a black bear crossing the border. Pushed by the people around him, Black Bear's steps were heavy and steady as he approached Xiao Xian at an even speed. Xiao Xian didn't notice the movements of Black Bear and Duo Kong. At this time, his attention was already on the stone in his hand. He knew that some people had been attracted around him, and more than he expected. Originally, Xiao Xian only wanted to see if he could use the stone carving to attract a few traveling merchants who were looking at animal skins. Even if he couldn't attract them when the stone carving was done, the carving could be placed here as an advertisement. There would always be people who would be curious. After all, no one around used this method. Xiao Xian's stone carving skills were trained by grinding stone tools. When old Ku taught him, the requirements were quite strict. The subtle mistakes would be pointed out to Xiao Xian one by one, and then he would continue to polish and correct until there were no mistakes. Since the effect of attracting attention was better than expected, he had to be more serious. The general outline had been formed. Xiao Xian replaced the stone hammer and picked up the knife to continue. Carving again, Xiao Xian quickly got into the mood. The tinkling sound was gone, but everyone's attention was already on the stone in Xiao Xian's hand. With the flying stone chips and powder, a forest killer was taking shape. The traveling merchants had already left the hunting life. It had been passed down from generation to generation. Some of them had already stopped coming into contact with any large beasts and ferocious beasts. It was natural to feel strange to encounter such a stone carving. This is a carving of a giant bear. A Yinjiao person next to Xiao Xian cried out. When the word giant came out of his mouth, his pretentiousness immediately increased. At the same time, it also proved to others that they had indeed hunted a giant bear. How could they carve such a vivid image of a giant bear if they had never hunted one before? Although there were people who carved on bronze or other objects, they had never seen such lifelike stone carvings. This stone sculpture was very small, but one could feel the ferocity of a ferocious giant bear roaring in the deep mountains and forests. Before the stone sculpture was finished, someone asked, "How do we exchange for this stone sculpture?" Tribesmen usually asked to trade directly. Most of the people around were merchants, so they knew the tribesmen's requirements very well. Some people even took out a copper knife and wanted to use it to trade. When the others saw this, those who had the same idea also moved. They took out a knife that was slightly bigger than the person in front of them and went directly to Duo Kong to negotiate. The people here were smart enough to know that the leader of the Flaming Horn tribe was Duo Kong, who was standing next to them. If they wanted to negotiate, they would have to talk to the person with the most authority. As for the kid sculpting, he had to listen to the leader. So the people who thought they were smart directly targeted Duo Kong. Black Bear, who had already walked in front of Xiao Xian, did not speak. His eyes were fixed on the stone sculpture in Xiao Xian's hands that was about to be completed. A stone sculpture could transmit the sculptor's consciousness. Looking closely, Black Bear could see that this small stone sculpture was actually transmitting a wild and violent aura. It really was like a giant bear waving its giant paws and roaring in the forest. If Xiao Xian was carving other beasts, Black Bear would not be so serious. It couldn't be helped. Who told him to like bears? Their ancestors worshipped bears and worshipped the strength of bears, but at the same time, they also worshipped the warriors who hunted bears as fierce warriors. Now, the tribe had become a caravan, and they rarely had the opportunity to go into the forest to hunt giant bears. However, their obsession with bears was still passed down. The symbol of their caravan was the totem, the bear. From the moment he saw the stone sculpture in Xiao Xian's hands, Black Bear's eyes could not move away. "I want 20 pieces of animal skin," Black Bear said. Compared to the others who directly negotiated to buy the stone sculpture, Black Bear's words were more tactful. Duo Kong, who was chatting with a few people, heard this and immediately called for people to count the bee's skins. He even chose the best quality ones. Black Bear's reputation was not bad. No matter what his style was in other matters, at least he was very honest when it came to trading. He would not be stingy when it came to trading. There were large pieces of animal skin, but generally speaking, there was no need to specifically mention large pieces of animal skin. Basically, they were talking about small pieces of animal skin. Fearsome beasts were huge, and if a piece of animal skin was too big, it would not be easy to sell. Everyone bought it back to make clothes, so they did not need such a large piece. Therefore, there were small pieces of animal skin. As time passed, everyone formed a consensus. There was a fixed standard, and the size of the animal skin was similar. It was as if they had formed a set of quantitative units. The toll paid to the gatekeeper when they entered the city was a unit of cut animal skin. After the 20 pieces of animal skin were sorted out, Duo Kong had people stack them up and pass them to Black Bear. After checking the animal skin, Black Bear looked at Xiao Xian. "How about 20 pieces of animal skin and the stone sculpture for me? I can compensate for it with gold." The gold that people here talked about mostly refer to bronze, which was also the target of Yinjiao people. At this time, Xiao Xian's sculpture was just finished. Hearing Black Bear's words, Xiao Xian blew away the stone fragments on the stone sculpture and looked up at Black Bear. His eyes were calm as he said, 30 pieces. Black Bear's gaze went back and forth between Xiao Xian and Duo Kong. Then he looked away and nodded to Xiao Xian. "Okay, another 10, another 20 pieces. Bear skins are best. If you don't have any bear skins, then find something close to one." Duo Kong grinned and signaled to the people behind him to sort out another 10 pieces. While the others were sorting out the animal skins, Black Bear received the stone sculpture. He looked at it and was very satisfied. He carefully put it into a thick bag of fur that he carried with him. Then he pulled the rope of his coat, grabbed it with both hands, and opened the heavy coat to Xiao Xian, Duo Kong, and the others in a domineering manner. Black Bear's coat revealed large and small knives, swords, axes, and other bronze tools. Some of them were in the inner clothes, some of the bigger ones like axes and swords were in the waist, and some of the lighter ones were hanging in the inside of the coat. Xiao Xian. He cursed several times in his heart. No wonder Black Bear gave off such a strong sense of heaviness. It really was heavy. How could it not be heavy when carrying so many things? How was this a bear? It was practically a human weapon carrier. However, this also proved that Black Bear was indeed strong. To be able to carry so many things around every day and still live until now, without enough strength, there was no way he could have survived. Duo Kang's eyes lit up. He looked at the objects of different colors and sizes. He raised his hand and pointed at a few of them. Some were big, some were small. How many things could be exchanged for 40 of those animal skins, and what quality they could be exchanged for, Duo Kong knew in his heart. When the two sides finished trading, the people around them started clamoring to trade with them. 5, 10 pieces of animal skins were all bought. With Black Bear in front, they did not doubt the quality and origin of the animal skins that the Yinjiao people brought out. Everyone knew that Black Bear would not buy anything bad. Even if they did not know the Yinjiao people well, following Black Bear was definitely the right choice. They were not as extravagant as Black Bear, but with so many people, Duo Kong was already grinning from ear to ear. However, even if these people wanted more stone sculptures, it was already too late. In one day, almost half of the animal skins were sold. This made Duo Kong very happy. In the past, he might not have been able to sell so many in 5 days. Today, he managed to do it in 1 day. Sure enough, Elder Xiao Xian had a way. At this rate, they would be able to return in less than 10 days. At night, when they were huddled together in a simple tent to rest, Xiao Xian took the time to carve another stone sculpture. This time, it was not a giant bear, but a different kind of fierce beast. For the next 2 days, Xiao Xian would take out a stone sculpture every day. Just like the first day, he would give them away if they bought more. For those who wanted to buy animal skins, this was very attractive. Although many people could not buy dozens of animal skins at once, they would still patronize the Yinjiao area for the sake of the stone sculpture. Those who bought a large number of animal skins to take away the stone sculptures were traveling merchants and people sent by the slave owners to buy them. On the 5th day, the animal skins brought by the Yinjiao people were almost sold out. Everyone did not have to keep an eye on the goods. After exchanging them for copper weapons, food, and so on, they each took what they had and gathered together to exchange. The people of the Taihe tribe were quite envious. This time, because they had brought some relatively rare herbs, they were selling things much faster than before. But no one expected that Xiaoxian would appear in Yinjiao. Without a big order, Xiaoxian no longer carved. Seeing that there were not many things to sell in Yinjiao, he took out his own stones. For this reason, he had asked people to help look after them yesterday and let these stones shine in the sun all day. Now, as long as he took them to a slightly darker place, he could see the obvious light on the stones. In the past few days, more and more tribesmen came to Amba City. The surroundings were full of shouting and quarreling, competing to see whose voice was louder and whose was louder. From time to time, people could be seen being sent flying. Xiaoxian did not compete with them in terms of voice. Instead, he made a wooden sign with words written in bright plant pigments. A new gem that glows in water, sunstone. The drumming tribe's crystal stones were produced during the full moon and were called water moon stones. Xiaoxian made this one to absorb the Yangguang, so he changed the moon to sun. The wooden sign was supported by a long pole and inserted next to it. There was no need to shout, just directly waiting for people to come. Xiaoxian had people turn the wooden sign every once in a while to change the direction so that people in other directions could also see the words on the wooden sign. New things were always full of attraction. Just now, there were tribesmen who were glad that Yinjiao was finally deserted. Who would have thought that not long after, they would see a large number of people rushing to Yinjiao? There was no way around it. It was just that the sign erected there was too eye-catching. Chapter 393. As soon as Xiaoxian took out the stone, it attracted a lot of people's attention. The words on the wooden sign were simple and clear. So many people didn't look at anything else and went straight to the Yinjiao area. What is it? It's glowing? It can't be nonsense, right? That seems to be the place where the Yinjiao tribe is. Their animal skins were selling well before. Let's go and see if it's real or fake. No matter what their opinions were, curiosity had already risen in their hearts. They would rather waste more time than miss out on any possible rare item. For the purchasers sent by the slave owners, if they brought back rare items, their superiors would be happy and they could get a lot of benefits. For the merchants, after buying from the tribes, they could change places and resell to other slave owners, and they could still make a profit. On the Yinjiao side, the goods they brought were almost all sold. After Xiaoxian took out the crystal, more and more people gathered around, and they spontaneously protected him. Every year, there were many thieves who took advantage of the chaos to steal things, and they had to keep their eyes open. This time, Xiaoxian brought a total of 10 crystals, and now he only took out one. At this time, the weather was already cold, and many people were wearing large cloak-like animal skins. It was easy to check if the crystal was really glowing, and they just had to cover it with their own coats. But don't even think about stealing. There were so many eyes around, and as long as they saw the slightest sign, they wouldn't be able to take back their claws. One by one, people squeezed over with large animal skins that completely covered the light and covered the crystal in Xiaoxian's hand with their large animal skins. Their eyes moved closer to look. In the dim field of vision, the small crystal emitted a clear light. Holding it, they could easily see the words in the dark. Without waiting for them to look, Xiaoxian had already taken back his hand and showed it to the next person. After looking at about 50 people, Xiaoxian put away the crystal and returned to his original position. He said to the crowd, "What do you think? Are you satisfied?" Some nodded, while others remained silent. However, all of them stared at Xiaoxian with fiery eyes, waiting for him to continue. Xiaoxian didn't say anything. Duo Kong took over the mission, but he didn't tell the whole truth. He only said that they found this crystal when they were hunting fearsome beasts. They dug it out from the bottom of a river that was connected to the sea. This wasn't a lie. If that river had water, it would be bigger than the one in front of the tribe. It could be considered a big river, right? It was said that the river would flow to another, bigger river, and then the bigger river would flow into the sea. This was not wrong. As for the total number of crystals, Duo Kong only said that there were 5. This was decided by Xiao Xian, Duo Kong, and the others last night. Unlike Xiao Xian, the people who often hung around here were no strangers to Duo Kong. Therefore, they believed that Duo Kong wasn't lying. At least, he wouldn't lie completely. While Duo Kong was introducing the glowing crystals to everyone, Black Bear, who had been away for 3 days, was sitting in a stone house with a large yard in the city. He was holding a large ceramic bowl and gulping down meat soup. There was a large piece of barbecued meat on a plate next to him, which he finished in 2 or 3 bites. While Black Bear was eating, a big man hurriedly pushed open the door and came in. "Boss, the tribesmen have something again," the man shouted as he ran. Every year when the tribesmen came, they would bring some rare things. Although Black Bear had left, he still sent people to keep an eye on them. "Did something come out over there?" Black Bear wiped his mouth, put down the bowl, and asked. The Yinjiao people brought out a glowing stone. "That stone really glows." "Really, I saw it with my own eyes." The big man was afraid that Black Bear wouldn't believe him, so he quickly assured him. "Yinjiao people again?" Black Bear muttered. He put on his coat, called his men, and strode over. On the other side of the chaotic trading ground, Duo Kong had already explained the rules of the trade. They had also discussed it beforehand. They would use the auction mode, and 5 crystals would be auctioned together. This kind of crystal would definitely attract more attention. If they split the auction, the longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. They might be able to get more benefits, but the risk was too great. It was better to end this quickly and leave as soon as possible. Duo Kong had already discussed it with the Taiha people. In order to let the Taiha people pack up early, Duo Kong had also given them some grains. Duo Kong took out a bronze sword that was as long as an arm. They had all been trading for a long time, so they could tell the value of this sword at a glance. Duo Kong used this as the starting price and let the others start bidding. 1 sword and a bag of grains. 2 swords, 2 swords, and 5 animal skins. What? You don't want animal skins? Then let's have the grains. I promised they were just harvested this year. 2 swords and 10 bags of grains. 3 swords. Hearing the atmosphere getting hotter and hotter, and the bids getting higher and higher, Duo Kang's heart was blooming with joy. "Boss, should we also fight for it?" The people beside Black Bear were anxious. That kind of crystal, even if it was 5 bronze swords, it was still worth it. Once they reached the royal city, they just needed to resell, and they could get even more. Black Bear's gaze swept over Xiao Xian and Duo Kong. He was about to call out a price when he heard an arrogant voice shout, "A bronze cauldron!" Just as everyone was shouting with the unit of measurement that Duo Kong had given, a cauldron suddenly appeared in the midst of all the swords. It was very abrupt, like a group of pigs that suddenly screamed like a chicken being slaughtered. Whoosh! A path was forcibly broken through the crowd. 4 tall men with strong muscles opened the way in front, followed by a young man wearing a silver-gray animal skin coat. There were other people around him, and the most conspicuous one was the person standing next to him, carrying a heavy object. Every step he took left a clear footprint on the ground, and his bulging meridians pulsed like dragons, as if he was withstanding an enormous pressure. On his back, there was a heavy object wrapped in cloth. A cauldron? Everyone only felt the ground under their feet shaking with the other party's footsteps. Bang! The heavy cauldron was put down not far from Xiao Xian and Duo Kong. When it landed, it made a muffled sound with metal trembling. The people who heard it felt as if their hearts were shaken to their throats. That is, someone guessed the identity of the young man. To be able to appear in such an arrogant manner, it was naturally a slave owner in Amba City, and his status was not low. The young man who walked slowly raised his hand and swept the non-existent dust on his animal skin coat. In a tone of charity, he said to Xiao Xian and Duo Kong, A copper cauldron. Don't you tribesmen like copper? I'll give you a cauldron, enough for you to make a lot of swords. Duo Kong almost spat out a mouthful of saliva. Listening to this tone, people who didn't know would really think that they could take advantage of it. How could a copper cauldron be the same as a cast sword? Do you really think that a copper cauldron can be easily made into another thing? Do you think we're easy to fool? When the other party pulled down the cloth, revealing the copper cauldron that reflected the dazzling light, many people present exclaimed, "Looking at it this way, this cauldron was really good. Hey, that's not right. Why are the 3 legs of this cauldron not the same length?" The triangular copper cauldron's 3 legs were too long and one was twisted. It was not stable on the ground, and the pattern on the copper cauldron looked blurry. Even part of the circular cauldron's body was sunken in. The slave owners here valued the cauldron very much. They used it as a ceremonial object and certainly would not tolerate such a failure in their own homes. Now, this show-off actually took out an inferior product to bully people. What, did he think that he was giving charity to beggars and directly throwing trash? Yinjiao people didn't like slave owners. If you talked to them about strength, they would talk to you about class. If you talked to them about class, they would talk to you about class. They would never talk about the same topic. So the Yinjiao people didn't like slave owners who thought they were great. But the slave owners did have a lot of good things in their hands. There was a lot of technology and knowledge that they needed to learn. They admitted this and paid some price to learn and understand it. But it didn't mean that they were afraid of the slave owners. And when the slave owners looked at the Yinjiao people, they felt that the Yinjiao people were a group of troublemakers. They didn't listen to reason or force, and they were too damn stubborn. Unfortunately, this young master obviously didn't understand the style of the Yinjiao people. No exchange. We don't want a cauldron. We only want the swords and axes that have already been forged, Duo Kong said. He didn't expect to be rejected. The young man frowned and wasn't satisfied with Duo Kang's answer. You don't want it? We don't want the cauldron, Duo Kong confirmed again. The young man smiled, but there wasn't much of a smile in his eyes. Instead, there was a flash of darkness. You must have it. As the young man's last word fell, the person who had just put down the cauldron bent his arms and rushed forward. His arms, which seemed to have accumulated all his strength, were like ignited cannons. He pushed the cauldron on the ground towards Xiao Xian and Duo Kong. The cauldron, which was pushed up at high speed, flashed like a golden light. It left the ground and brought with it a biting cold wind and the chill of metal. It went straight for Xiao Xian, who was holding the crystal. Black Bear thought that Duo Kong would intervene. After all, in this kind of situation, usually the one who intervened was the leader of the group. They represented the entire tribe. Their opinion was the decision of the entire group. Fight or compromise? The onlookers thought to themselves. But to everyone's surprise, Duo Kong, who was standing closest to Xiao Xian, didn't make a move. He still stood in the same spot. Xiao Xian, who was facing the cauldron, lowered his waist and bent his knees. His whole body was like a mountain that was rooted to the ground. He raised one arm and pressed it against the cauldron. He actually chose to take it head-on. Bang! With the reverberation of heavy metal. It was as if a huge drum had suddenly been struck, producing a deafening sound wave. Even the golden light reflected by the 3-legged cauldron seemed to have been completely dispersed in that instant. The moment the sound rang out, everyone in the tribe's trading area was shocked. What happened? This was what those who didn't see what happened were thinking. What happened? This was the person who saw the whole thing, but couldn't react. Black Bear's eyelids kept twitching. That kid actually took it head-on with one hand. Bang! There was another sound. This time, it was different from the explosion of sound waves. This time, it was the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. The body of the cauldron, which was almost as tall as a person, fell to the ground again. The surrounding soil and stones were shaken away. The dust was blown away by the wind, but the cauldron didn't move forward an inch. It stopped in front of Xiao Xian. Chapter 394. Because of the protection of his subordinates and several slaves, and Ping, who sat there with a proud posture, did not suffer much damage from the momentum. Only the sound just now hurt his ears. Pushing aside the people in front of him, and Ping frowned and looked at the person standing there like a mountain. He looked at the totem pattern on the other's body and seemed to have seen it before, but he couldn't remember. And Ping cursed his bad luck. Today was really unlucky. He went to check the goods early in the morning and brought back the pre-order cauldron. Who knew that there would be a mistake in the cauldron casting? In a fit of anger, he let the slaves around him carry the cauldron away, intending to find someone else to cast the cauldron. There were so many people in the Yin family. Why let an outsider cast the cauldron? What's more, it was cheaper to cast the cauldron himself. However, when he came out of cauldron casting, he heard someone say that there were treasures in the free trade zone, so he brought people over. He wanted to exchange a useless cauldron for those treasures. Not only could he get rid of the failed product, but he could also show his generosity. If the other party did not give him face, he would use force. Who would have thought that such a situation would occur? Or the people around him saying, Yinjiao tribe. The name was a bit familiar. Meeting that pair of eyes, and Ping actually felt a sense of fear. And Ping had no choice but to look elsewhere, but his neck seemed to be particularly stiff when he turned around. Xiao Xian, who had been sitting there, had stood up because of the cauldron. At this time, the hand that blocked the cauldron was still on the body of the cauldron. His feet were apart, his knees were propped up, and his body was slightly crouched. He stood there steadily, giving people the feeling that a sleeping beast had opened its eyes after being provoked. Savage like a beast, this was the evaluation of the people of Amba City who lived in remote places. The Yinjiao tribe in front of him was also the same in Ping's heart. And in Ping's eyes, the moment this savage beast woke up, a powerful aura erupted from its body. That was not the power that an ordinary savage beast could produce. That ferocious aura that rampaged just now was something that no one present could ignore, no matter how slow they were. Tricky. That was in Ping's thought at the moment. After the silence, there was a burst of noise. They thought that the person in charge here was Duo Kong. Even if it wasn't Duo Kong, it would be Guang Yi. They didn't expect it to be the young man who took out the gem. Who is that person? Are all the young people in Yinjiao so powerful? Look at that in City Guy's expression. I wonder if the two sides will really start fighting. It's good to fight. We can take advantage of the opportunity to pick up some good stuff. I heard that the Yinjiao people got a lot of good stuff these days. Although many people had other thoughts, they knew to keep their voices down and not say it out loud. They just kept their eyes fixed on the movements on the field, waiting for the opportunity to explode. And Ping's eyelids trembled slightly. For a moment, he really didn't know what to say. The people around Onping rolled their eyes and immediately seized the opportunity to stand up, wanting to leave a good impression in front of Onping. He took a step forward and pointed his finger at Xiao Xian and the others. He raised his chin and said, "What? Do you want to be enemies with the 6 tribes of Amba?" Because they used to belong to one of the 6 strongest tribes. Even if they were later merged and subdued, the people of the Amba tribe, who were now the people of An City, still like to call themselves the 6 tribes of Amba. This way, they would have face and satisfy their vanity. Unfortunately, for the Yinjiao people, it didn't matter if you were from the 6 tribes of Amba or the 7 tribes of Amba. If you stepped on our bottom line, don't blame us for fighting back. Xiao Xian looked at the other side calmly and said, "I heard that you 6 tribes of Amba like cauldrons. We'd better not take what you love. This cauldron is yours." It was clearly an ordinary-looking hand. Compared to the enormous cauldron, it was so tiny. However, the scene from before gave people the feeling that the entire cauldron was enveloped by this hand. At this moment, it was the same. Bang! As the hand on the cauldron retracted and slapped, there was another sound of metal trembling. It was heavy with a high-pitched sound and unrestrained, murderous intent. Once again, it resounded throughout the entire free trade zone. The cauldron, reflecting the golden light of the sun, turned into a stream of light and flew straight to the person who had just jumped out. The cauldron flew so fast that the person who had just jumped out couldn't avoid it all. Under the collision, the skin on the surface of the person's body seemed to suddenly split open, bursting out several bloody marks. Blood splashed from the cracks, and the sound of broken arm bones and sternum was completely suppressed by the sound made by the cauldron. All the people around saw was the figure of the person who flew out upside down with blood spurting out. When he fell to the ground, there was a long trail of blood. The cauldron fell to the ground. Because the 3 feet were uneven, it couldn't be stabilized. After landing, it buzzed and swayed several times before standing crookedly. At this time, the flaws of the cauldron were completely exposed. Black Bear looked at the crooked cauldron with contempt in his eyes. They didn't even bother to look at this kind of thing. As for the idiot who took out this thing and wanted to force a trade, he deserved to be slapped in the face. Not only Black Bear, but even the others who were thinking about how to pick up the scraps secretly felt that this was a good slap in the face. Did they really think that their tribesmen's eyelids were shallow and that they could be dealt with by a little broken thing? Although the onlookers retreated a little further, as if they wanted to stay away from the battlefield, they didn't really leave. They didn't mind watching a show. Moreover, for most of the tribesmen here, they usually gave face to the people surnamed in an Amba city, but they weren't really afraid of them. Naturally, they were happy to see the Yinjiao people humiliate the ants. Anyway, this matter didn't involve them. On the other side, seeing his subordinates on the ground, and Ping's expression twisted. This was a provocation to the authority of Amba City. Unable to sit still any longer, and Ping suddenly stood up and waved his hand. Beat them. After a pause, he added, "Get those glowing stones back for me." After receiving the order, several figures around and Ping rushed straight to Xiao Xian. But this time, Xiao Xian didn't move. When the other side rushed over, several figures also rushed out from his side and behind him. Duo Kong and Guang Yi rushed to the front. Did they think they were dead? If they all relied on Xiao Xian to fight alone, they would be scolded by the shaman and chief when they returned. There was the sound of metal clashing, as well as the collision of bones and muscles. Fists and feet collided, and with the sound of bones breaking, a figure smashed to the ground. Puff, 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 puff. Another sound of people falling to the ground rang out one after another. And Ping's twisted face became even more ferocious with these sounds, but he didn't have the guts to fight personally. After smashing the last person who rushed out to the ground, Duo Kong and the others returned to their own camp and stood around Xiao Xian. Duo Kong took out an axe that he had exchanged not long ago and threw it to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian caught the axe and turned the handle between his fingers. Then he held the handle firmly in his palm and looked at Ping and the others not far away. Without the paint, the flame-like totemic patterns on their bodies were fully displayed. If there was only one beast that had just woken up from a deep slumber, now there was a group of beasts. The aura of 100 people was almost twisted together like a burning axe, ready to break through all obstacles. Strong, fearless. Even the bystanders who had retreated could feel the pressure clearly. You have your untouchable status. I have my overbearing and unreasonable ways. Don't try to reason with me. In the free trade area, the first person to break the rules has no right to talk about reason. No matter what, the Yinjiao people's bottom line was always very clear. You want something? All right, just do as we say. Take out as much as you need, not a single one less. Otherwise, we'll beat you up. There was a sense of anxiety in the air. Even the onlookers didn't dare to make a noise. At this time, a clear voice suddenly came from outside the crowd. What's going on? As the voice fell, the crowd parted to form a path. Unlike in Ping, the person who appeared at this time wasn't so ostentatious, but he was more eye-catching. Many of the tribesmen in the trading area knew him, and Ping gave people a sense of vanity. But the person who appeared at this time had a noble aura. This was a member of the main bloodline of An City. Hearing the voice, and Ping's face suddenly changed. He put away his other expressions, and his eyes were filled with panic and fear. But thinking about it, what did he do wrong? How could the tribesmen not be willing to take advantage of him? Thinking of this, and Ping quickly walked towards that person. Seeing the other person's gaze, and Ping shrank his neck and continued to complain. The first thing he said was, "Those barbarians, Not only the Yin Jiao people, but also many of the tribesmen who were watching the show raised their eyebrows. Barbarians? At least I abide by the basic rules here. What about you guys? Do you think I want to show you how barbaric I am? And Yin stood there quietly, listening to Ping's complaint. His expression didn't change, and he didn't interrupt. Instead, he stretched out his palm. It didn't seem to have any offensive power, but when it hit Ping's body, Ping directly spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out. The crowd watching the show hurriedly made way for Ping to fall directly to the ground. If it weren't for Yin here, they would have stepped on him a few more times. Yin looked down on what Ping did. He only felt that how could City raise such an idiot? Fortunately, they were in charge of this branch. As for the other branches Ping belonged to, those who could raise idiots were naturally a bunch of idiots and trash. Yin looked down on them even more. Yin knew that the tribesmen in the trading area were angry, so he simply used Ping to appease the tribesmen in the trading area. Looking at the people around him, sure enough, after seeing Ping get beaten, the anger on their faces faded a lot. Looking around with a faint smile, Yin said in a clear voice, "My city also follows the rules. Since we provide a place for everyone to trade, naturally we will abide by these rules." After he finished speaking, he looked at Xiao Xian and the others. He waved his hand to have people bring over a large box. Yin said, "That crystal stone, I will pay 5 swords and 5 bags of grains. Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price?" The surroundings were quiet. Even if they weren't convinced after thinking about it, they still gave up. First of all, they really couldn't afford the price City offered. Second of all, they didn't want to compete with the young master of City. This young master still followed the rules, so they also gave him face. Black Bear's eyes flashed with ridicule when no one was paying attention. Rules? Rules my ass. Chapter 395. Duo Kong looked at Xiao Xian, and when he saw Xiao Xian nod, he went over to count. Xiao Xian also took out the 5 crystals. "In that case, these things are naturally yours." And Yin smiled, and the anxious atmosphere from before dissipated, letting people take the crystals away, and Yin also let people drag the cauldron that was standing crookedly on the ground. "This cauldron is a gift to you as an apology." Although the cauldron was a failure, it was still bronze after all. If it was not satisfactory as a weapon, it could be used to make other things. Even Black Bear felt that this gift was good. Duo Kong naturally felt that this gift was very cost-effective, but it also depended on Xiao Xian's thoughts. Young people were, after all, impetuous. Sometimes, in order to fight, it was understandable that they did not want the benefits in their hands. Unexpectedly, Xiao Xian smiled and did not refuse. "Thank you." After the two sides completed the transaction, Yin left with his people, and the trading point returned to its previous state. However, those who wanted to take advantage of the situation were quite disappointed. They regretted that they did not fight. The people of the Yin Jiao tribe packed up their things and left amidst the discussion of the people around them. The people of the Taiha tribe also left. This was something they had arranged long ago. On the other side, the people around Black Bear watched the Yin Jiao people leave. They raised their thick fingers and pointed in the direction the Yin Jiao people left. "Boss, should we follow them?" "Of course. I don't believe that's all they have." Black Bear grinned. The people of the Yin Jiao and Taiha skillfully left Amba City, took care of a group of followers, and then quickly left along the road they came from. Originally, Duo Kong planned to go another way. This was what they did every time. When they came, they would take one road, and when they went back, they would take another road. It was safer this way. However, Xiao Xian suggested that they go along the original road for a while, and then change. Anyway, the two roads were not far from each other at the beginning, so it was not too late to change. There wasn't much cover around this section of the road, so if there was anyone, they would be able to discover it in advance. At first, the people from Taiha were against Xiao Xian's decision, but fortunately, they would still change their route when the time came. After thinking about it, they reluctantly accepted it. However, it was natural for them to have their own opinions, so they didn't give him any face. The large cauldron had already been wrapped in a green-gray cloth, so it wasn't as conspicuous as before. The Yinjiao people were strong, so it wasn't that strenuous for them to carry it. After a while, they would switch to another person to carry it one by one, so it wouldn't take too much time. The journey back was much more dangerous. There were quite a few robberies. Previously, when they saw the Yinjiao people picking up good stuff, there were already quite a few groups who wanted to rob them. This time, no one held back. Those who needed to be killed were killed. So, a slight sound was heard. More robbers? Everyone was on high alert. Xiao Xian smiled when he saw the approaching figure. "They're finally here," Xiao Xian said. "You knew we were coming?" Black Bear asked doubtfully. "I guessed." Xiao Xian didn't say anything else. He had only noticed Black Bear's gaze when he was leaving, and based on other people's evaluation of Black Bear, he had made a final guess. That was why he had everyone follow the original path. The danger level of this journey was not high, and if no one came after this journey, they would switch to another path. Black Bear's thick eyebrows twitched, then he laughed loudly. "You Yinjiao people are really interesting." If they could guess that he was coming, then they could definitely guess something else. The Yinjiao people were smarter than he thought. Seeing that it was Black Bear, the others relaxed slightly. Duo Kong walked up and asked, "Could it be that you still want to trade with us?" They had left in a hurry, so they still had some things that they hadn't sold. There were even more people from Taiha left. Hearing this, they looked at Black Bear expectantly. "That's right," Black Bear said in a rough voice. "I know you still have those glowing crystals. I'll trade with you at the same price as in yen. How about that?" Seeing Xiao Xian nod, Duo Kong was happy. When he heard that Black Bear would buy all of their remaining goods, Duo Kang's eyes narrowed into slits. The people from Taiha were no longer angry. In fact, they were quite grateful for Xiao Xian's decision. Now that they had sold all of their goods, it would be easier for them to go back. After letting his men complete the trade, Black Bear asked Xiao Xian about the use of the glowing crystals. After Xiao Xian finished, Black Bear touched the thick leather hat on his head, took out a piece of bone engraved with a bear pattern, and handed it to Xiao Xian. "If you have such goods in the future, you can come to us directly. I'll still eat the animal skin and other goods. Oh, and that stone carving of yours, if you have it, I also want it. It's best if it's a giant bear, but if there's no giant bear, other things are fine too." Black Bear also mentioned their base in Amba City. Coupled with the bone plate, if Black Bear wasn't in Amba City, they could still trade as usual. The Yinjiao people didn't have to worry about being cheated. Cooperation? The Taiya people were a little surprised. Black Bear's reputation was indeed good, but he didn't always have a fixed partner. They had trading forces everywhere, so they didn't have to be afraid of the people of Amba City. Even if they were enemies of Amba City, they would still trade with them, not to mention the Yinjiao people who only had a little friction with them. But even so, the Taiya people were still surprised that Black Bear would find Yinjiao people to cooperate. Could it be that he really took a fancy to Yinjiao's crystals? After the trade was completed, Black Bear added, "Don't believe the people of Amba City, especially when they mention rules. Because in the hearts of the Amba people of the 6 tribes, what they say is the rules." The people of Amba City never had fixed rules. In the past, when the Yinjiao people went to Amba City to trade, it wasn't conspicuous, and there weren't many things that they really valued. But this time was different. The Yinjiao people not only beat the people of Amba City, but also took out things that would cause trouble. "Thank you for telling us," Xiao Xian thanked him. "Even if I didn't tell you, you would still be on guard." Black Bear's eyes swept over a large wooden box next to Xiao Xian. "Can I know what's inside?" Just now, when Xiao Xian moved the box, he heard a little sound. It wasn't the sound of metal, but more like the sound of stones colliding. Could it be that there was still something good that hadn't been taken out? As a businessman, sometimes his curiosity was still very strong. Otherwise, how could he smell a business opportunity? Those are not things for trade. Xiao Xian refused. With that said, Black Bear was even more curious. He pestered Xiao Xian for a while, promised some other benefits, and took out some small bronze objects as gifts. Only then did he let Xiao Xian open the box. When he saw the things inside, Black Bear was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. Then, in a good mood, he called his men to leave. The people of the Taiha tribe, because of their angle, did not see what was in Xiao Xian's box. What was inside was not the things that Xiao Xian exchanged with the crystal stones. Naturally, it was something else. What was it? Ignoring the curious gazes of the people of the Taiha tribe, Xiao Xian packed up his things and planned to set off again. The person he was waiting for had arrived, so it was time to change his route. With Black Bear as a partner, the Yinjiao people would not have to worry about being rejected by the people of Amba City when they brought things to trade. After taking 2 steps, Xiao Xian stopped again. He saw that the cloth wrapped around the cauldron had been torn. Guang, he was letting people wrap it with other cloth. Although this was a failed cauldron, the material and parts of the cauldron were still very exquisite. The body of the cauldron was heavy and thick, and the engravings and words on it were full of an ancient and fierce sense of mystery. At that time, when Yin proposed to give the cauldron as a gift to the Yinjiao people as an apology, the others felt that because the cauldron was a bronze object, it could be recast into other objects or exchanged for more benefits. So the Yinjiao people accepted the gift. But Xiao Xian agreed to accept the cauldron not entirely because of this. The main reason was that he was very interested in the engravings and words on the cauldron. The people of the Great Six Cities used the cauldron as a ceremonial object. The cauldron symbolized power, whether it was a major celebration or a reward for people. Many times they would record some more special things on the cauldron, representing different meanings. And Xiao Xian was interested in this. Yes, most of the people here were literate, but the extent of their knowledge was very limited. The words they were familiar with were the words commonly used in daily transactions. As for the more complicated words, there were fewer people who understood them. Some of the more complicated sentences were extremely simple but profound, just like the conclusion used by the tribe in the past. They were even more confusing, so there were even fewer people who cared about them. Many people made their own weapons, but never added words on it. At most, they added their tribe's totem or name and nothing else. They felt that it was too troublesome and were not as particular as the people of the Great Six Cities. Not only did they add words, but they also drew a lot of other patterns that were superfluous to them. Just like this cauldron, although they knew that there were words on the cauldron, they only felt that it was for decorative purposes and could not understand it. They were also not interested in these things, so naturally they would not look at it. When the cauldron was wrapped up again, Xiao Xian's gaze moved away from it. Let's change our route. Duo Kong called the rest of the people who were still resting, and the group set off again. On the other side, Black Bear led his people away. There were also people who tried to rob them, but they were all dealt with quickly. Boss, you saw that kid from a Yinjiao tribe in the box. What was in it? One of the people in Black Bear's team pulled a leaf from a nearby tree, wiped the blood on his sword, and asked. Something interesting, Black Bear replied. What could make you laugh like that? Everyone was puzzled. How many of the people in Yin sent out do you think will come back? Black Bear asked. They had a wide network of people in his city, so they were naturally aware of Yan's movements. Don't be fooled by Yan's righteous appearance in front of others. He kept talking about the rules, but in reality, he was ruthless. As soon as the Yinjiao people set off, he sent people to chase after them. He also knew that the Yinjiao people used to take a different route back, so he sent people to chase them in that direction. He did not expect that the Yinjiao people would go back the way they came. However, they would definitely meet the Yinjiao people later on. Speaking of which, neither route was safe. On one side, there were people from other tribes waiting to ambush them, and on the other, those in Yan's people chasing after them. If it was before, Black Bear might have sympathized with the Yinjiao people, but now, Black Bear felt that the other side might be the unlucky one. The others in the group were still discussing Black Bear's words. Seeing Black Bear's gloating face, they could not help but ask, Boss, how many of Yan's people do you think will come back? Even if they fail, at least half of them will come back, right? Half? Hey, 10 or 20 is more like it. How is that possible? The others did not believe it. Is it a trap? That's impossible. It was not that they looked down on the Yinjiao people, but they knew that most tribesmen still cherished weapons. Even if they set up an ambush, they would choose wood, rope, and so on. If that was not enough, they would use all kinds of medicine. As for metal, they were pitifully few because they were reluctant to use it. The lethality of wood compared to metal was, of course, much smaller. Bone was very restrictive and inconvenient to use, so in the use of many traps, many tribesmen may not be able to compare to the people of the 6 great cities. Not everyone was as generous as the slave masters of the 6 great cities. In this world, there are not only wood and metal. Black Bear sighed. Stone tools, this thing that had almost disappeared from the stage of history, he saw in the Yin-Jiao people. Moreover, they were very meticulously made, as if the maker had already thought about how to use those stone tools. Like a spider perched in a hidden corner, when it pulled out the first silk, it knew what kind of web it was going to weave. Chapter 396. When Xiao Xian was in the free trade area, before he took out the crystal stones, he would spend his free time every night polishing stone tools. Because the animal skins sold quickly, many of the Yin-Jiao people were idle for the next few days. Xiao Xian asked them to find stones, and then choose the stones they were satisfied with and polish them into the required stone tools. Xiao Xian learned from Duo Kong and the others what kind of terrain the road back was, how high the mountains were, how much vegetation was distributed, how many species of animals and plants there were, and so on. Therefore, when he was polishing the stone tools, he had already thought about what kind of traps and nooses to set up. Even if there were no crystal stones, according to Duo Kang's past experience, they would still encounter a lot of robbers. In the free trade area of Amba City, many people could talk and laugh with you one day, but the next day they could ambush you in the mountains and kill you. When going out to trade, it was necessary to be vigilant. Therefore, Xiao Xian made these stone tools to prevent too many people from chasing after them. Stone tools were not like gold tools. As long as there were no special requirements, the requirements for stone were not very high. Usable stone materials were everywhere in the mountains and forests, unlike gold tools, which were not distressed to waste. For many tribesmen, a small dagger could be precious. Of course, it was impossible to throw out gold tools like darts or hidden weapons. If they threw them away and couldn't get them back, they would definitely be distressed. Obviously, the people sent out by Yin to chase after them had the same idea. They inquired about the Yin-Jiao people's previous style of conduct and inquired about their past deeds, but they had never heard that they would use large-scale traps and hidden weapons on their way back, so they didn't care about chasing after them. At first, because the Yin-Jiao people did not follow the original route, they didn't see any figures. Later, when they saw footprints and other traces of walking, they excitedly continued to chase until they heard the slight sound of a string bouncing. It was as if a bird had flown up from a tree, and then they were faced with dense wooden thorns. It was really too sudden. Even if they reacted quickly, they couldn't completely avoid the sudden attack of the wooden thorns. One of the members of the team waved the sword in his hand, and the sword shadows formed a shield, blocking the wooden thorns that were shot at him. At the same time, he kicked the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly bounced away, trying to avoid these wooden thorns. However, when he landed again, he stepped on something. He felt as if there was a thin rope suddenly pulled out from under his feet, and then there were wooden thorns coming at him from the side. Not only that, every time he took a step back, he would trigger a hidden noose and then round after round of attacks. There were so many people in the team. As long as one or two of them triggered the trap, once they panicked, they would trigger the other traps. It would be impossible to guard against them. Wooden thorns were not as hard as metal, but when they were shot out at high speed, they could still injure people. Furthermore, there were other things on the wooden thorns. Once they broke through the skin, the poison on the thorns would spread through the blood. It would not kill them, but it would cause them a lot of trouble. It would also affect the speed of their pursuit. Bang! With a soft sound, a cloud of light yellow powder suddenly exploded in the air. Like a fog, it quickly spread out. Those who could escape from the battle hurriedly jumped away. No matter what it was better to avoid it. The people who were attacked by the wooden thorns thought that it was some kind of poison. They held their breath and waited until they blocked the wooden thorns and jumped out of the attack range. When they saw the light yellow smoke dissipate, they breathed again. When everything finally stopped, the leader looked at the people who were rolling on the ground and secretly said, "Trash." His gaze shifted to a tree beside him. There were more than 10 thin wooden thorns nailed to it. He carefully moved over, and after making sure that nothing else was triggered, he quickly reached out and plucked a leaf. He wrapped it around a wooden thorn and pulled it out of the tree trunk. This was a wooden thorn from a plant in the mountains. The end of the wooden thorn still had some greenish-brown marks, indicating that it hadn't been long since it was pulled out. In the forest, there were many such plants, but many animals had rough skin and dry flesh. These wooden thorns weren't much of a threat to the animals with thick fur, but humans were different. They didn't have thick fur to protect them, nor did they wear armor. After being hit, they would be affected by the poison on the wooden thorns. Fortunately, the poison wasn't strong and wouldn't kill them. The tribesmen liked to use these little things. The leader sneered. However, who was the one who had set up the continuous attacks that were as dense as raindrops? Was it an ambush by others? Or was it the Yinjiao people who left? There was a faint, sweet fragrance in the air. He didn't know if it was the fragrance of the flowers on the tree or something else. The leader threw away the wooden thorn in his hand and frowned. He glanced around with hazy eyes. Even after several rounds of attacks, they still couldn't find any traces of a trap. Keep chasing. Ignoring the people on the ground who were affected by the poison, the others planned to continue forward. Everyone, be careful. Those tribesmen like to use these little things, the leader said. In their eyes, these were all little tricks made of wood and flowers. But after just 2 steps, they didn't know who stepped on something, but there was a short sound of rattling vines. Everyone's nerves suddenly tightened, and they clenched the weapons in their hands. The leader grabbed a bronze shield from one of the team members and vigilantly looked in the direction of the sound. However, they did not receive a new wave of wooden spikes. Instead, they saw a few strange wooden objects that resembled crescent moons fly out. Furthermore, they did not fly towards them. Instead, they flew in a direction far away from them. The flying wooden objects accurately passed through the gaps between the branches in the forest. They weren't blocked by the thick trunks and dense branches. Instead, they rushed out of the cover of the leaves and flew in an arc into the distance. Bang, bang, bang. They didn't know what the flying wooden objects hit, but when they heard the sound, the pursuers' hearts jumped and their nerves tightened again. After the wooden objects hit something, they flew in other directions. Then, some dense whooshing sounds came. Realizing what it was, the leader shouted, "It's the leaf-piercing bee! Dodge!" Unlike the buzzing sound made by other mountain bees, the flying sound of the leaf-piercing bee was very special. It was similar to the whooshing sound of an arrow passing through. They were 2 to 3 times larger than ordinary bees and flew very fast. Because of the cone-shaped hard armor in front of their heads, they could easily pass through the leaves. Being stung by them, the consequences were much worse than the wooden thorns. "There's actually a leaf-piercing bee's hive around here," the leader said angrily. The leaf-piercing bee generally didn't take the initiative to attack, but once it got angry, it was very aggressive. Moreover, the leaf-piercing bee's hive was very large. Almost every hive in the forest occupied a whole tree, so the number of bees was naturally large. Except for those beasts with thick skin who liked to steal honey and were talented, other beasts in the forest kept a respectful distance from the leaf-piercing bee's hive. And these pursuers obviously didn't expect that the Yinjiao people would take the path of a leaf-piercing bee. The wooden objects that flew out just now were targeted at the leaf-piercing bee's hive. The hive was attacked, and the leaf-piercing bees were angry. Just by listening to the sound of the leaves being passed through, one could know the mood of the leaf-piercing bee at this time. As soon as they heard that it was the leaf-piercing bee, the others in the team panicked and quickly spread out to distract the attention of the leaf-piercing bees. If those leaf-piercing bees went after the others, they could also escape this disaster. However, even if they spread out, there were always leaf-piercing bees chasing after them. It was the light yellow powder with a slightly sweet smell. Thinking of the reason, The leader was angry and aggrieved. If it was a head-on fight, then it was nothing. He was annoyed that the tribesmen's little tricks could kill people. Many of those leaf-piercing bees were slapped to the ground with a sword, but the more it was like this, the angrier the leaf-piercing bees were. The whooshing sound in the forest continued. A man touched the noose because he was trying to avoid the wasps and was hung up by his feet. Before he could use his sword to cut the vines, he was clamped by 2 large clamps with sharp stone awls on both sides, like the mouth of a giant beast. He didn't even have the chance to scream. In an instant, the blood spread. Similar situations happened everywhere else. Some were tied up, some fell into the potholes. And then what greeted them was the real killing move. The whooshing sound of the leaf-piercing bees, the dense whooshing sound like rain, and the panicked screams of the pursuers mixed together in the forest. At the foot of the mountain, 2 groups of people were hurrying on. It was a Yinjiao and the Taiha tribe. They could hear a little of the movement on the mountain. Not only the Yinjiao people, but the Taiha tribe people also glanced at Xiao Xian from time to time. They didn't know what Xiao Xian had done. After changing paths, Xiao Xian told them to hurry on with all their might, ignoring the traces left on the ground. Then Xiao Xian brought a few people to cover their backs. Before leaving, he asked the Taiha tribe people for some medicine. Because it was for the safety of the 2 teams, the Taiha tribe people didn't hide anything. They gave Xiao Xian everything he asked for. The powder that attracted the leaf-piercing bees was made by the Taiha people. They dared to walk near the leaf-piercing bee's nest because the Taiha people had a way to avoid the leaf-piercing bees. The team waited for a while at the foot of the mountain. Xiao Xian came back with people, but the expressions on the faces of the people who came back were very strange. Some were at a loss, but some were looking forward to it. Duo Kong was one of them. He originally thought that Xiao Xian brought them to block the pursuers, but he didn't expect that when they reached the mountainside, Xiao Xian told them to stop and then assign tasks. They were to break wood thorns, cut wood, find vines, and then Xiao Xian carried his wooden box and continued to walk up the mountain with those things, starting to arrange them. Xiao Xian said that he could block the pursuers, but Duo Kong didn't believe it. Now that he heard the movement on the mountain, it might really be like what Xiao Xian said. Flap, flap. A flock of birds flew over the team in the sky. Those birds, the Taiha tribesmen's eyes narrowed as they looked at the sky. Their gazes followed the birds, and they looked at the mountain behind them that was constantly moving. Those birds were scavenger birds. They could smell blood from far away and then follow the smell to find food. When hunting in the forest, they would also judge what was happening based on the movements of the scavenger birds. Now, the place where the scavenger birds were flying was the place where the Yinjiao people had set up the trap. Are those people all dead? Someone on the team asked Xiao Xian. It's not that easy, Xiao Xian replied. But after a few more times, there shouldn't be many left. A few more times, the Yinjiao people and the Taiha people looked up at Xiao Xian at the same time, then looked away and hurried on in silence. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.